Great. Thanks, everybody, for joining us for our second budget meeting for November 27th, 2025 at the CBRD office Civic Room. I'd like to just start by respectfully acknowledging the land on which we're gathered this evening as the unceded territory of the Comox First Nation, the traditional keepers of this land. And with that, I think we're going to move into day 2 of financial planning and discussion, and I will pass it over to Mr. Langenmeyer.
Nice to be here once again. So we're getting on day 2, and we're starting off with Chris Davidson. Oh, he's going to speak from the podium and everything. I like that.
All right, let me get that microphone going.
Oh, beauty. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Happy to be here. Through the CIO to Mayor and Council, happy to present the Infrastructure Environmental Engineering Services budget overview. As we know, Infrastructure Environmental Services is responsible for asset management, capital project delivery, and environmental engineering. Strategic projects for 2026, 6th Street Bridge, East Side Fire Hall, Corporate Climate Action Plan, Memorial Pool Detail Design, Braidwood Complete Street, Ryan Road Sidewalk, and Lake Trail Multi-Use Pathway Phase 2. So budget drivers we see, rental fees for the new office space that engineering will be moving into. We're requesting 2 new staff. Capital, we have Lake Trail Multi-Use Pathway Phase 2, Braidwood Road Complete Street, South Courtney Sewer Phase 1B, and Memorial Outdoor Pool. So touching on staff requests, so we are requesting 2 new staff. For the capital team, we are not requesting new staff, however, we are proposing to capitalize the Eng techs. So they are funded directly from capital projects. This will allow greater flexibility to match staff level to the capital plan. We are proposing a new environmental Eng tech. This role will focus on implementation of IRMP, flood management plan, corporate climate action plan, and supporting works. We're proposing this to be funded from LGCAP funds. And we're also proposing a new infrastructure planner position within the asset management team. This has been identified as a gap through our organizational review work, and this will facilitate infrastructure planning across the organization, support master plan development, and that it will be funded through taxation. Moving on to the engineering operating budgets. So for the engineering budget, we have a service level impact of $117,000. This represents $20,000 to support rent for the new office space that the engineering group is moving into. This item also includes $97,000 to fund the new environmental Eng tech. Again, I would highlight this proposed to be funded from LGCAP funds. And we have a one-time decrease of $50,000 due to capitalizing of the capital Eng techs. For the asset management budget, we have $78,000 to fund the new infrastructure planner position. We have a one-time decrease of $10,000 to balance salaries accordingly. And we're carrying forward all unspent funds for work that didn't get completed due to staff turnover this year. Oops. Special projects. Corporate Climate Action Plan, we're carrying forward all funds. Integrated Rainwater Management Plan implementation, carrying forward all funds. Flood Management Plan, that's supposed to say implementation, carry forward all funds. Youth Climate Corps, we're proposing a new $65,000 to fund the program for another year and build off the strengths we had last year. Home Energy Navigator Program, carrying forward all funds. And then in space, invasive species management, new funding to support new plantings at McPhee Meadows. So we're obligated to do this through environmental offsetting requirements from Nature Trust BC and Environment and Climate Change Canada. I would highlight McPhee Meadows Phase 1 capital project is approximately $250,000 under budget. So it's envisioned, of course, that that could cover these funds and also the proposed signage. Special projects. So here we see the list of special projects bringing to the table. You'll still see corporate facility energy management in there. We're almost finished. We're still reviewing if we need this carry forward. We're leaving it in for now. However, it may be removed in the future. Capital project budget drivers. So Eastside Fire Hall, we're reducing the budget by approximately $5 million. Renewable energy options, removing this project, proposing to reallocate the funding to the building energy projects. Braidwood Road, increasing the budget by $2.2 million. That's spread across general water and sewer. This is as per our July staff report. McPhee Meadows will proceed for council direction given on November 19th. That hasn't been incorporated into this financial presentation today, but will be in the future. Lake Trail Multi-Use Pathway Phase 2 increased the budget by approximately $265,000, also as per our July staff report. South Courtney Sewer, very, very challenging project. So we're now proposing to further phase out Phase 1 of the project into Phase 1A and Phase 1B. So Phase 1A would proceed with design in 2026. This is to leverage development needs with with potential synergies on the gravity portion of these works only. So this would also defer portions of the works where there is less certainty. From a technical standpoint, this project is relatively straightforward. However, there are a lot of other considerations that need to be taken into account. So I would caution if the city were to proceed on our own timeline, we could potentially be leaving millions of dollars on the table if we missed out on any synergy opportunities, or else find ourselves in a situation where we might have to come back in 10 years to add more capacity by potentially twinning the new main. So we want to make sure we're proceeding in a prudent fashion. And lastly, Memorial Outdoor Pool, advance the replace option for $32.5 million, carry forward available funds into 2026 to facilitate design of that.
Yeah, and I think Mr. Garbett had a comment.
Yeah, thank you through the mayor. Just the input, if you go back one slide, please, Mr. Davidson. So with respect to the McPhee Meadows, could you or Adam explain? So the budget as is currently includes the money for phase 2 and 3. The direction that the November 19th council adjusts that budget. And so if we could explain, because we want council to be very clear what the reduction is related to the direction with respect to phase 2 and 3, because it is a significant tax funded and then borrowing related outcome.
Yep. Thanks for the question, Mr. Garbett. Yeah, so as you can see on the screen there, we do have McPhee Meadows, has not been updated since the direction was received. Currently has 295,000 showing in 2026, and also 2.8 million showing in 2027. Based on council's direction, staff understand we would reduce both those amounts. 2026 would be reduced to $100,000 to facilitate looking into alternatives for the Fisherman's Trail, and also potentially some stairs for the phase 3 access. And then the 2.8 million would be removed completely for 2027. Just want to confirm that's council's intention from their resolution at the last meeting.
All right.
Okay. So also on this table, so this is the general capital table only. We'll see the sewer and water capital later on in the presentation. You may note Fire Hall showing a budget of $18 million. Council may recall staff had communicated a cost estimate of $13.9 million back in July. I'd like to clarify the project team still feels confident we can deliver the project for $13.9 million. However, finance has proposed to include a larger number in the financial plan to facilitate a higher level of borrowing should more funding be needed. Due to the condensed construction timeline, finance wants to have some flexibility for funding should the situation change. Not sure if Mr. Langenmeyer has more to add to that, or relatively satisfied.
One thing a piece I want to identify about this recommendation is, since this project is 100% debt financed, it really does not leave the city with much buffer if we were to structure a financial plan to the exact dollar of the expected construction cost. Because if costs exceed that, going out and securing more debt does take time, and we would need to dip into other cash reserves in the interim. So by going with a higher amount, it doesn't mean we have to borrow the 18 million. It means we have the ability to borrow up to if needed. We'll come back with a recommendation to council once the project is done, once we have all the prices in, and say, hey, this is how much it costs. This is the amount of long-term debt we want to take out. At that time, council can also choose to apply different reserves, or if we have some surplus on hand, we could do that to reduce that long-term debt at that time. So it really leaves us with the flexibility, and it doesn't create additional cost for the city.
Sorry, if I could just add quickly, staff will also be communicating cost updates to council much earlier than after the project's completed, as the design continues to advance and as we get pricing in for various stages. We'll be communicating estimated costs as we receive them. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks for that. And that's generated a couple of questions. Maybe Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, I did have a few questions on this just as we move closer to initiating a build on this. So it's out for design, and we're expecting that process to complete, like, and how soon do we expect to receive that design and costing?
Excellent question. So it's, so just to be clear, it's not a design bid build process, it's a design build process.
Yeah.
The architect has been retained. They're advancing the design now. So we have schematic designs, floor plans and renderings. We do hope to report back to council soon. The construction management contract is out for RFP right now. We anticipate to have that consultant on board contractor in January. Their first task will be reviewing the design and developing a detailed cost estimate. And we hope to have that back likely in March, I would say. And then from that point, yeah, it would be a decision point for council, of course, and proceeding through in a phased fashion. So it's not the case that all of the design will be ready right at once. They'll be proceeding through the design in a chronological order as you would construct the building to facilitate like a fast track construction, essentially.
That's helpful. When do we expect to know the construction start? The contracted cost of the build and the completion date, like, would we know all that information in March?
Yes, yes, we would.
And that brings me to my second question, because we've put $18 million of borrowing in, that'll be refined at some point when we have more certainty. But when does that borrowing cost start to impact the budget?
Mr. Langermeyer.
Like, when do we forecast having to actually pay interest on that 18 million? I guess this may be a clearer way of asking that.
So through construction, I would structure the debt similar to a line of credit, where as we construct and we pay, we'd incur interest only on the amounts we've drawn on it. Once the construction is completed and the project is finalized, then we'd come to council with the request to turn it into long-term debt. So the actual time when we'd be really hitting the stride of the regular debt payments would likely be late 28 or even 29.
And is that what our financial plan reflects currently?
It reflects it occurring in 28.
That our first debt servicing
Yes.
costs are in 2028?
That's correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Councillor McCollum and Councillor Cohen.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Chris. I just wanted to ask a question for clarification about the renewable energy options that's being reallocated to building energy projects. And I assume renewable energy options would be like solar panels, that sort of thing. And the money is being diverted to energy projects, which I would assume are like building envelope improvements and electrification of heating and hot water. Is that correct, my understanding?
Excellent question. It's a combination of both. There are both efficiencies, but then also renewables included as well. So the renewables are planned to come along later on in the work plan, focusing instead on maximizing efficiency, reducing GHG emissions.
Okay, and I just would say, just as kind of a comment on the renewables, like while I think it's admirable for where it makes sense cost wise to add renewables, BC's grid is 97% carbon free, so the actual savings towards our GHG reductions of renewables are fairly minimal. So if they're not going to long term produce, an overall economic benefit, as many people put them on their houses, because long term it's more, it's an economic benefit. Say if they're not an economic benefit, it'd be good to discuss them again at council to see if that's an effective way of reaching our goals. But anyway, support that and appreciate the explanation.
Very astute comment. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, Councillor Cole-Hamilton and Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Chris, I wondering if you could repeat your understanding of the McPhee Meadows motion from last week.
Yeah, absolutely. So understanding from staff, so removing all the budget except for $100,000 for next year, and then investigating alternative options for the Fisherman's Trail, and then also stairway access for phase 3, looking at if either of those are feasible and what options might look like.
Thanks. I think I was daydreaming when you said it the first time.
All right. Well, we're focused now. Back to Councillor Warren.
Yeah, so we are under budget on McPhee Meadows, and we're going to take a bit of that for the environmental piece, I believe. for the new plantings.
Yes, that's correct.
So that will still leave another 124,000, I believe, out of that over budget. So that'll just get carried forward towards towards this new work, or?
I would leave that question to our CFO, but in my understanding, yes, unspent monies, oh, sorry, no, I believe it's a separate line item. Phase 2 and phase 3 is separate from phase 1. Let me refer that question to the CFO, actually. Thanks, Adam.
But if this is, yeah, so this is under budget, we are gonna take some of that towards the invasive species management, but there would still be some left. So I guess I'm just curious whether that can go towards, even though we're reducing the budget, we might be not needing that if we still have some left, I guess is my thought.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we don't-
Anytime a project comes in under budget, we return the funds to either the reserves or the general surplus, depending on where that project was funded from.
Yeah, so we technically are not actually allocating 100,000, a new 100,000. Okay.
All right, thanks very much for that. And any subsequents, Councillor Moore?
Oh, no, sorry.
All right. Excellent. We'll continue on.
Okay, there we go. Fire hall, McPhee, okay, yes, so last point, pardon me, memorial pool slate correction to the table, so currently showing 32.5 in 2028, 32.5 million in 2028. We would likely reduce 2028 to 31 million for a project total across the 3 years of 32.5. So just want to clarify that point there. Proposed capital projects. So not a lot from the engineering team. So as per recent staff reports, corporate facility energy management plan projects, $1 million in 2026, zero emission vehicle fleet conversion chargers. So this is the charger portion only, 291,000 2026. The ZEV fleet portion, I believe will be showing up in Mr. Shaw's presentation. I understand we're looking for $680,000 in 2026 to fund that one. Our manager of environmental engineering has asked me to highlight that we do believe there are grants available to fund these works. Further, these two areas, facilities and fleet, are the two major contributors toward the city's greenhouse gas emissions. Council wishes to meet the 2030, 2040 climate objectives. There must be movement in these two areas. Lastly, and hot off the presses, I can update the province has just yesterday released their review of the Clean BC program. The recommendation is to strengthen investment in climate change initiatives going forward. They also see the main path forward to meet climate objectives as electrification of both building energy and vehicles. So hopefully that will translate into more funding for both of these programs. Okay, and there's the table summarizing the programs as proposed. Into the home stretch, prior year financial plan motion. So exploring revenue options. Engineering doesn't really generate revenue. We prefer to spend money. We did get some grants though. So projects for the grant that have grant funding are listed there. We've also applied for grants for the fire hall. Of course, whichever projects are approved, we'll be keeping a sharp eye out for grant opportunities. Reviewing, prioritizing the capital plan. So we reduced the budget for fire hall, McPhee Meadows phase 2 and 3. Projects delivered under budget, Anderson demolitions, McPhee Meadows phase 1, Lake Trail Multi-Use Pathway phase 1. And we've also worked with development services to optimize the DCC capital program to fund the needed works. Identifying operational efficiencies, we're proposing to capitalize the engineering technologists. And with that, I'm happy to take it.
Councillor Moore.
Yeah, about grants. Have we had any word federally yet about all this wonderful new infrastructure money that's supposed to be coming?
I don't believe, I see Mr. Garber reaching for his button. Did you want to speak to that? No, okay. We have not heard anything directly. No, we are very hopeful though, of course, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Through the mayor to Councillor Moore, the budget that came through from the federal government, there's a number of moving parts. We're staying in touch with information from FCM and UBCM in that regard. And I know that I believe the mayor has been speaking to our MP about initiatives. And so we'll do our best to stay on top of that. That's one of our strategies to try and manage as the capital budget represents the majority of our need on the taxation side. We're going to do our very best around securing those grants and also looking for kind of support. And when I say like small R regionally support, because a lot of the projects we're working on have implications, references made to future discussions around the pool, et cetera. So I think trying to work together to prioritize our grants in, to sort of hopefully take a Team Comox Valley approach, and it would be a good way. But at this point, it's not completely clear on any new programs, but we will do our very best. And one great thing about our council is so plugged in through their involvement at our different local government associations that we often get information actually for our elected officials, which is fantastic.
Yeah, and just maybe to reiterate the one comment that the city manager made, which is when we look at where taxation is coming from in future years, this is the bulk of it. This is these major projects. Councilor McCollum.
Yeah, thanks. Two quick questions. One, if you could just refresh my memory, I know we gave some direction on looking at those low concrete barriers for the Lake Trail project, and there's an increase required to the budget, not for those specifically. So I'm just wondering if we haven't had a report back, and I know we're focused on getting phase 1 done well. We still had a window for it, but I'm wondering if you can tell me if those barriers may be included in phase 2 within the amount of budget that we've allocated to it.
Excellent question. Thank you for that. I would say no, that would be over and above the budget as proposed in this presentation. Staff have done some initial work. What we're focusing on now is working with the DFO to get all of our permitting in place and confirm that we can even proceed with construction. I can report that we've had some relatively positive feedback in the last month or two. We do seem to be converging on terms. Our budget does seem to be in alignment with DFO expectations, so it's been quite a positive exchange over the last little while. Staff have explored a couple of options to provide the Sanderson curbing as requested from council, and we do plan to come back to council should we be successful with DFO. We'd probably report back either way. Staff do plan to come back with a report on that option in the future, likely January or February, I would say.
Great. And if it's okay, Mayor, can I ask just 2 in a row, or should I get back in the line?
I saw have at her from
Okay.
Councilor Paul Hamilton.
I'm gonna keep going. Yeah, so the funds that we have allocated for the zero emission fleet conversion, 291,000 in 2026. I guess I have a few questions around this. We haven't determined if there is grant funding available at this point. Is that correct?
We believe there are grants available. We have not applied to a grant. We would wait for it to be endorsed in the budget, of course. We've heard some very positive feedback from BC Hydro about this, but I can't make any promises or guarantees at this time. And I want to be clear, this is just for the 291 is just for the chargers. The fleet vehicles are a separate line item.
Yeah, sorry, I did get that part. So, and these are fast chargers, is that right? The level 3s, is that what we're putting in, or is it a whole bunch of level 2s? Or
I think it's a whole bunch of level 2s for the initial rollout.
Okay.
But then I believe there's further, it fluctuates over the years. Sorry, flipping on my slides, but not the council side. You'll see it fluctuates over the years depending on needs to match the rollout of the ZEV transition program.
Yeah, and I assume there's probably some electrical work. It's not just chargers, because I don't think they're quite that much, but I know electrical can be fairly expensive. And so I imagine that there is probably some rebates for the chargers, but probably not for our electrical work, is my guess.
Our understanding is that there's rebates available for both in speaking with BC Hydro, but again, that would be have to be confirmed, especially if we're talking about a few years out.
And yeah, so I guess my question is, and maybe we'll get more refined information outside of the budget process, but just whether or not there is the possibility of ensuring that our rollout for adding these additional capacity is in line with what is available granting wise, because if it's a fairly stable granting source and there's a maximum, then spreading this over a couple of years to ensure that we're getting a maximum subsidy from other funders would be my inclination. I mean, I know some of these grants kind of come and go, but it seems as though the BC Hydro ones do tend to stick around fairly consistently. So just hoping that we're considering that option too, if there's, like a cap that doesn't quite meet our needs.
Absolutely great comment, yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, and it's that chicken and egg as well, where we can't apply for it until it's in the budget. So it's sort of, yeah, right on. Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. In one of the slides, it was talking about projects that come in under budget, and I'm always a big fan of things like that. And it listed the Lake Trail Multi-Use Pass Phase 1, and I'm not sure I understand that, because I know that back in June, we split it into 2 phases and it required an additional $457,000 of funding. So I guess I'm just confused as to how it's coming in under budget.
Oh, great question. Thank you. So back in June, we had requested further budget, and we're also requesting further budget for the phase 2 portion. So most of the budget increases tied to this project, or as a result of this project, are tied to DFO requirements for phase 2 because of the SARA listed species. We ended up getting some very good pricing for the phase 1 works through the construction tender. So we're slightly under budget, maybe $50,000 on the amount we had set aside for that work.
But for the overall project, it is still
It's still about $2 million overall what we're seeing. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Appreciate the clarification.
All right, thanks, Councillor Cole-Hamilton. And I don't see any other lights, and we don't have anyone on Zoom. So I think we are on to the next operational services. And maybe while Kyle is getting to the podium, I'll just mention the fact that today I was invited to assist in installing the very last 40-kilometer-an-hour zone sign in the city, 2 years before I had a schedule and under budget. So with that great news, I'm sure there's more to come. I'll pass it over to Kyle. Yeah, no pressure.
No pressure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the mayor to council. So good evening. I'm pleased to be here today to present the proposed budget for operational services. Tonight we'll highlight some of the key achievements, some ongoing priorities, and areas where council direction will be valuable as we go through this presentation. I will preface with I do have a number of slides that's a little over 30. So maybe I'll look to the group to, if you give a thumbs up, I can go faster, thumbs down, I can slow down. I'm really here to be at your pleasure tonight to get you through this and ensure that the information that you've received today is clear and concise and meets the needs of council. So happy to go through that. Operational services, in short, really provides reliable and delivery of services, core infrastructure services for the city, including water, wastewater, transportation, parks, and the public realm. Our mandate is to ensure the safe and efficient operations of sustainable services for the residents, guided by industry best practices and or required provincial or legislative standards. Operational services consist of 6 functional areas with a total FTE count of approximately 80 staff, an overall budget of 9.5 for the operating. So that doesn't include solid waste, water, or sewer. Combined, if you add them all back up, operational services oversees about 43% of the city's total operating budget. And what you'll see as we go through here today, that the 2026 proposed approved plan represents a 0.8% increase on what was proposed in the plan to what you'll see in terms of amendment or requirements or request from staff today. As Acting Director Chan talked about yesterday, just noted right off the top, the civic properties envelope or portion of work is now transitioning from operational services to rec, culture, and community services. The operational budgets have been shifted, and as you saw in the presentation yesterday, the staffing complement following that is changing hands on December 1st. So this will be obviously some back and forth between the groups, but that is just part of the restructure within the organization. So just to highlight that off the top. So moving into strategic priorities, you might note I pulled some of these images right from the strategic plan because they're very smart images. So drawing right from the plan and focusing on some of the things that are either in flow or ongoing that are represented in the budget here today. Traffic calming plans, prioritization, and infrastructure delivery. We saw in 2025 the delivery of the policy. The policy work is now encompassed in terms of a day-to-day activity, and we work with our residents through the policy document to go through the policy and then potentially come back to council with infrastructure amendments to particular areas that actually flow through the criteria of the policy. And in doing so, as we receive more requests, we're hoping to achieve a prioritization matrix based on the calculated value of those reviews for council's consideration as we go through the programs. You'll see that Cliff and Fifth intersection is there. It'll be represented in the budget this year for works and services, both infrastructure renewal as well as amendments to the crossings to create the 4 legs. So we're hoping to get that project underway fairly quickly. We're already into procure for design and hoping to achieve a success in construction award in March of 2026, so we can get that done prior to the busy season in the downtown. Continuing through with water conservation, focused specifically this year on universal water metering business case. We're hoping to bring that business case back to council in Q1, January of 2026, to have a very robust conversation on all the work that transpired over 2025 with our consultants around universal metering, what the implementation of universal metering could look like, and options for council's consideration. So that's coming really soon. And then ongoing, working with our regional partners, operational services has a number of touch points with the regional district, including solid waste, transit, liquid waste management, and water. So we continue to work with our partners on those fronts to bring forth great projects and great continuity within service delivery models for the groups. Budget drivers. We talked a lot about the fleet EV conversion and the accelerated renewal. It will be a budget driver in terms of what we hope to achieve in terms of renewals, because the renewals will be expedited to achieve the goals as listed through the November 19th report to council. It will be done through reserve contributions. So we do have a machinery and equipment reserve that we'll be able to utilize. It will have impact in terms of net need for draw, and I'll talk a little bit about that as we get down into the fleet section. The water and sewer rate review is obviously also a budget driver. That was, as our CFO spoke to yesterday, are pre-established in terms of the 5-year plan, so they're articulated and identified, but I just wanted to note that they're there. Service level impacts, as always, urban issues continues to drive service levels within our group, as well as extreme weather response or emerging priorities for things like potential linear infrastructure failures or water service breaks and those types of things. The unknowns are often what drive the priorities and the budget. And then system failures, as I spoke to. I added a little, ad-libbed a little bit to the default slide and added some budget cost efficiency drivers, because we're doing a lot of great work within the operational services, looking for efficiencies within our works and services and what we deliver. So internal reallocations will be a consistent message through the budget, looking at our budget drivers, looking at our services and finding efficiencies within how we do our works and how we expense those works to find efficiencies and reallocate those funds. Instead of coming back to council to ask for additional funds, we can find strengths within other areas where we may not need to spend as much funding, and then shift that to areas that are growing or emerging in terms of their priorities. That includes asset optimization and key performance metrics and reporting. So with the new service delivery module, which will be expanded into the work order system, which you'll see in the capital platform, we'll be able to create great metrics in terms of our drivers, which will be reacquainted to the GL structures that we spent a great deal of time rebuilding to create the depth of transparency within our budgets. And then revenue offset or opportunities and partnerships. We have a lot of great partnerships with the community, ICBC being one of the big ones when it comes to the world and transportation. And so we leverage those opportunities to provide partnerships or granting as much as we can. The ICBC program through the RIP program provides a lot of great funding for us operationally for a lot of the crosswalk or the safe active sidewalk or the safe active travels programs, sidewalk renewals, those type of great programs. They partake in funding, so. Oh, I hit the wrong button. There we go. Okay, I'm back. So overall, the operational services budget, excluding, as I said, solid waste, water and sewer, nets in at about 9.5 million. Some of the key budget drivers include growth and capital impacts. Overall, staff were able to effectively mitigate many budget implications through scope bundling, scheduling optimization, and leveraging internal resources where they turned out to be cost effective or reasonable. And this approach allowed operations to maintain a stable service level without disproportionate increases. And you'll see that kind of go through the budget as we get into the detailed slides. I left a few in as talking points. We could have done a lot more reallocations, but wouldn't have a lot to talk about, but just to showcase the work that we did behind the scenes, because you'll see the reallocation column is fairly heavy, and that's that internal reallocation and optimization of the work that we do. Operational services has a fairly heavy budget in terms of 9.5 million, and we do offer a ton of services. And sometimes those services can be improved within the confines of the work and opportunities that we have internally. And that's our focus first and foremost, to optimize those works, reduce the cost to the taxpayer before we can come back and ask for additional funds to support the work we do. There's a great example of that as we get into the storm budget, where we talk about some of the money that we had for linear assets isn't being used year over year. The trended data are showing that that isn't required there. There's an increase in terms of service level for catch basins, so transferring some of those funds to do catch basins and still performing those service levels that are expected within the confines of the budget. So we'll see a bunch of those. I really did want to touch and highlight on the operational services logistics group. Looking at logistical coordination. So this particular position was a net new addition from last year. Didn't require funding to do it, but we've seen a lot of great success from that. It's really encapsulated overall in the budget. So this particular position undertook an introductory analysis. It's really the infancy of this adventure. We'll call 2026 an adventure. Maybe we're done with the journey. Try and key another word here with you guys. Looking at service delivery models, current resource allocations, and this is done overall to seek efficiencies across all operational services divisions. The analysis provided a clear framework for identity of cost drivers, prioritization of staff, resources, and investments, and aligning with both budget and operational needs or strategic objectives. The 2026 budget for council tonight directly reflects the outcome of those operational reviews, whereby staff have incorporated recommendations to optimize staffing levels, streamline workflows, and then target resources, seeking to deliver the greatest value for the money. The approach ensures that our budget is evidence-based, transparent, and focused on long-term sustainability. So each of the divisions is broken down into one of these slides, so I'll kind of jump through each one of them. The Operational Services Administration, or I like to coin it as the Operational Logistics Division, provides administrative support, logistical oversight, and is a home to some of the cross-departmental services, as well as interdepartmental support service structures, such as Urban Issues Support Team and our DCBIA Special Events Funding. So in light of last year, in the same way, the Urban Issues Group is actively in our community, working hand in hand with our team in bylaw services and providing great services in our community, and is driving a great amount of work in terms of that. The partnership there has been wonderful, and they continue to find new ways to better the work that they do. The driver this year isn't a tremendous amount, looking at about a $14,300 change year over year from last year. Mostly due to the amount of materials that the team is collecting on sites, which we're reaping the rewards of in terms of cleanliness of our community. We're not seeing heavy encampments established where there's a lot of debris that costs a lot of money to then go in and clean up, and a lot of staff time and a lot of resources and collaboration with our community partners. They seem to be on top of it. They know the spaces, they've developed relationships, they're working really, really well, and a lot of positives to push out for this. In terms of proposed increase of the service level, it's just based on trended demands, so we don't anticipate much more beyond that, really in response to staffing hours. As I noted, there's a reduction of 41K in the admin benefit portion, and that's just an historical trended value through articulation. We can understand that the funding hasn't been utilized in years past. It's just a bit of an overexertion in terms of that budget line. And so those are one of those things that we've clearly identified, both through operational services, logistics, as well as our finance team. And normally I would do a reallocation and offset, but I wanted to leave it here so it clearly demonstrates that you can see the negative balance in terms of that, whereby that offsets many of those things that we would otherwise have looked to achieve or ask for funding. And so at the end of the day, the net change is relatively low with respect to those items. And so that was one that we left just so we could clearly have that conversation and showcase that work that happens both from an operational perspective in terms of our budget awareness and then working with our team in finance. See a question.
Great, thank you. Just a quick question on the special events. It's gone up a little bit. Is that because we're having more, or it's involving, they're getting more complicated, or?
Yeah, it's great. This particular up in it, well, I will say overall the events are going extremely well.
Mhm.
A lot of individuals are coming to those events, and the DCBI has been a great partner in working with the operational services department to ensure that we're aware and abreast of those works so that we can provide as much support as possible. This one is anticipation of the net cost for traffic closure or traffic works that are required for permitting or for the Métis Walk. We anticipate that to be an annual walk, and so we're just amending the budget to support that in perpetuity.
Okay, thank you.
Fantastic. And just to reiterate, the folks that organized that walk said that there's no way they could have done it without city support. So really appreciate it.
Pat on the back for staff. Thank you for that. So I'll try and touch on some strategic priorities as I go through, focusing on transportation as we dive into the transportation budget. So for 2026 to 2030, some big projects coming out of transportation. I'm really excited that the transportation group has its own identity now within the operational services, and it's funded in a way that can support this, and it has the staffing complement to really take these initiatives to the next level. So we've launched the strategic transportation plan. That's underway. You can see that we've used the Let's Move Courtney logo there that's up there now. So we'll start to see a lot of engagement conversations. You'll see a lot of stuff on social media now, and we're really starting at the beginning of this and looking at information gathering and really seeking to invite community interest holders and feedback at the infancy of this project, as this project will transpire over a number of years, and council will be getting regular updates as we go through this process. Continue with the 5-year cycling network plan, hoping to have that completed in 2027, if potentially possible, depending on how many works we can get done in 2026. There's a potential to expedite that as well within the confines of the budget. It seems to be moving fairly well, and I've got a slide dedicated to it a little bit later, so we can talk about that in detail in terms of what the accomplishments have been since 2023 until now, and what we hope to accomplish in the next few years. We launched the Safe and Active Schools program in 2025, and we're hoping to see that come to fruition in the Q1 of 2026. And then hopefully for the 3 participating schools within that, there'll be some recommendations for infrastructure augmentation or improvements within the frontage of those school zones. A lot of great feedback. Open houses were well received and well attended. We're very excited about that program as well. And to work with SD71 as a partner, along with ICBC and the schools, the PACs and teachers and students all the way through. It's been an incredible journey. I'm really excited to see that one come to fruition. Pilot artificial intelligence solutions for traffic intersection management. That one's compounded by the completion of the pedestrian improvements on 5th and Cliff. So we're looking to add traffic cameras at the intersection, starting with a pilot program coming right away in January, February of this year, as we anticipate finishing design work for that intersection. And that will help us not only track and count our mobility, but also provide analytics to improve the functionality of that corridor. And those will be compounded by the additional renewals that we do within the corridor, and they will then all speak to each other, and we get those intimate metrics to provide performance augmentation in real time within the corridors. And I spoke to the opportunities that existed within this when we talked about that particular project at Fifth and Cliff, and our opportunity to leapfrog technology and go from what we would normally see as a timed data sheet into real-time AI-based analytics that are providing metrics and changing signals based on the intimate demand and need of our community at the time. That's the direction we're going. So we're very excited about the pilot project. So as I said, construction and completion of the pedestrian improvements on Fifth to create the 4 legs. We'll be doing data acquisition in anticipation of that. So we'll see the cameras go up fairly early. When I get pre and post information, so we'll have very good analytic and some reports to come back from that. 6th Street multimodal corridor. The grant funding for BCAT in 2025 was deferred or suspended. We're hoping to get some feedback here shortly as to whether or not that program will continue in 2026. It's a highly sought after program, a super successful program. We anticipate it coming back, and we are geared and ready to apply as it comes. There's still no word on the national in terms of both the interim and the ultimate build out. We have no word back on that, but we're hopeful as well in the new year we'll hear something back from the granting authorities. The traffic calming citywide prioritization. So as I articulated earlier, we've got the policy in place. We've had a number of interest groups with the policy, and so we want to bring back a priority matrix for council's considerations. We can talk about when things will come into fruition in terms of the capital impact. The only one forthcoming this year for 2026 within the proposed budget is for the completion of the traffic calming review and outcome of the policy analysis for First Street. It's closer. Is that better? Thank you. First Street, correct. Yeah. And as the mayor articulated, the speed limit reduction program is complete. It was completed today. The mayor had the privilege of installing the very last sign for the program. We are 2 years ahead of schedule, and we've dropped the budget requirements of $75,000 for both 2026 and 2027. We were able to complete that project 2 years ahead of time, and we were able to use see great success of that program by reusing existing signs. Our print shop has been fantastic. Council approved a capital acquisition of a digital printer, which was able to create the new signage. And so we've been able to reuse and recycle a lot of those materials and get it in place and get it ahead of schedule. So exciting for that. And thank you, Mr. Mayor. Photo op. And then the last one really is the policy implementation, which I spoke to, is as in terms of it being complete. So with respect to budget, last year, this functional area, as I articulated, was separated out from the roads section and fleet section to provide greater oversight and transparency for the transportation services function. These functions include traffic operations, traffic calming and road safety, active transportation, and special project delivery. This year, we'll see a cumulative impact in the CMP implementation work for 2024 and 2025 works within the capital impact area. We didn't put in the capital impacts from 2024 into 2025 because there was a carry forward. We didn't complete those works, but we did complete all of 2024 outstanding and all of 2025 in 2025. So we'll see the capital impact in terms of the contract for those hit the budget, and that's terms of longitudinal and transverse markings contracts. There's a reallocation of $188,000 from public works services to contract services to traffic control services. Staff are recommending that a portion of this work be completed in-house, and this work will better provide a broader oversight and accountability to the works, as well as reduce costs going forward. And there's some minor changes in terms of inflation, and these are some of those ones that the CFO spoke about, insurance on the bridge, the Fifth Street Bridge, and then some small changes in terms of electrical needs within particular areas and signals. So relatively minor overall. Public Works, overall, this area remains relatively stable as well. The only minor increase is in the snow and ice control, and that's under inflation for materials, sand and salt materials, so very minor. This one is funded with a reserve in mind as well. And so every year, if there is a surplus within this particular area, it flows to reserve so that we can create a very stable budget line item on this and then draw from if required and as necessary. Fingers crossed, knock on wood, we can get through the year without any of the white stuff. That would be great. Council will see a presentation about the snow and ice control program on December 10th. So we'll be able to ask some very detailed questions to the deploying team on that particular day.
We'll be able to ask about naming the snow plows. I think it's,
Sure.
I think I'm 10 years asking now, but
Well, they do, you will see that they do have blades that are painted.
Yes.
You saw on Public Works Week.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the blades will be deployed this year and the kids will get to see their blades in action. So
that's amazing. Yeah, it was a great project. Yeah.
yeah, super fun. Public Works Week was a great celebration and it was awarded, as council knows, both nationally and provincially. A little nod there. So it's great. Not a lot to talk about in terms of budget, but I did want to highlight some of the key works and services that happened. So I've got a couple slides here with some imagery just to really showcase some of those works that were done, nodding back to or acknowledging last year's presentation. There were some questions specifically about some of the works and services that we do. So sidewalk weed removal, we do 78 kilometers of mechanical weed removal, both spring and fall treatment. And then the service request module that we've just launched in 2025, there's a really great image on the right-hand side that shows potholes. So there's 450 potholes to date that were repaired in 2025 and they're logged. Very good KPIs, great metrics, great visual. And we hope as the pavement program continues, those reactionary works will start to reduce. Those are some great imageries of those works.
And I would say that slide saying 450 potholes, that would make a great Facebook post. Like that's the type of thing to celebrate and get out there. Councillor Morin.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, along those same lines, we do hear comments about how bad the roads are and how there's so many potholes and so many issues. And every year, to my recollection, there's more and more that is being added, getting done. So yeah, I think however we can communicate out better, that we're actually doing a better job at this than we have in the past, because we do hear the complaints about the roads, which, I mean, I guess people, I'm not going to mention the other local municipalities, but I guess they don't drive in some of the other places as much. But yeah, I don't know if that's something. I know we've been doing a great job with the snow and ice clearing communication, which I think now we get a lot of accolades around that. And I think part of that is that we increase that communication over the years. So anyway, not sure if that's something that's
Great
planned.
feedback. Thank you for that. Yeah, absolutely. Work with our team and partners in communication and work on some highlights and spotlight some areas. Obviously, from a pothole perspective, if we know about it, we can track it, we can react and move it. And you can see that there's quite a bit in terms of staff time dedicated to that. And 'tis the season, right? The fall season is typically the season as the weather's changing, the rain is there and we start to see them develop. But the sooner that we're made aware, and oftentimes that's the case, we're just not necessarily aware. As soon as we're made aware, we can track it. It goes into our system and then it's tasked to staff to go and actually work on. So it's great. Some additional great work that the team does, ditch maintenance, so improve drainage capacities, flood mitigation. This is along the bypass. You'll see that the crews were out there working, cleaning out some of those ditches, making sure that the volume of water that's going to traverse those areas through or convey through those areas can actually manage and make its way through. The sidewalk trip hazards, we work very hand in hand with our team in infrastructure and environmental engineering through the Public Works Inspector, who does our sidewalk inspection program every year, provides us with those notifications for deficiencies. And we rank them from level 1 to 3, with 3 being done within a reasonable amount of time, with level 1 being on a watch list. So there's a great example of ones that have been identified and then remedial actions that happen. So, and some of those are simply cut to remove the trip hazard. It's very economical versus replacing the entire panel. So. Wait for my stuff to catch up. Crack sealing program goes hand in hand with our paving program, looks to extend the useful life of our road surfaces. We apply on average around 30 to 40 kilometers of road and crack sealing every year, and then chip sealing on our less driven roads or our alleyways, laneways, and some of our rural contexts.
Councillor Cohen.
You just curious, chip sealing, I'm not familiar with it. It looks like if it's an entire like top coat on the roadway. It's like explain a minute or so how that works?
Fair enough. Yeah, absolutely. Instead of tearing up the existing road surface, they utilize the road that's there, fill any deficiencies, and then they'll spray a tar coating, and then overlay that with chip seal, which is just basically a rock. It compacts, hardens in place, and it creates a new firm waterproof barrier that extends the life of the useful road. It's a quite tenuous process, and then it takes a little bit of cleanup on the aftermath after it's been packed. Usually we allow the traveling public to pack on our behalf, and then afterwards we'll go in and pick up all the loose chips, and it creates a fairly nice surface that's extends useful life, and is extremely it's much less expensive than repaving the entire road.
And it works quite well. So there's a lot of remote communities and like Cortez Island, the whole island's paved that way, and it works fantastically. Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks. I know it's the province uses it a lot in the areas, but where do we use it?
Typically in our, I would call them priority 4 roadways, so our laneways, alleyways, and then any rural road that is a dead end or a stub.
Perfect, thanks.
All right, moving into parks. Parks also remains relatively stable overall. Some service levels, we see a small increase, 10K from insurance, $25,000 for the seasonal staff conversion. That's an extension of that program that we've been doing year over year. So this is the third. There's one more staffer after that. So you'll see this happen again one more time next year. And that's taking the conversion of our 8-month position into a 12-month position. So that covers the cost, and it's spread across the areas of which those particular individuals may work. There's again a tremendous amount of reallocations. You'll see much of the reallocation really land in the urban forestry area. We're looking to expand on the urban forestry area. We look to other areas to find efficiencies to support that rather than coming back. And what we're trying to do is, we had an arborist position. We don't have a dedicated arborist anymore. We have a supervisor of the arboriculture area in urban forestry and a number of staff, but no one holds the title of arborist, who would go out and respond to emergent or hazards, as well as the tree program that we're hoping to expand from 190 trees a year to the 300 mark to meet the OCP expectations of council. And so those focused alignments will push our ability for us to go and hire that position internally without seeking additional funds, and as well without looking for funds in perpetuity beyond this one-time movement. Again, you'll see capital impacts. The capital impacts for parks are with respect to playgrounds and trails, so Brookfield, McPhee Meadows. So those maintenance obligations are now articulated in terms of net impact in those particular areas. And not huge. Obviously, net new doesn't cost a lot to maintain, but it does have impact as our other infrastructure ages and this comes in. We want to acknowledge that there is a change in resource demand, and there'll be another structure of area where our staff will need to be deployed and manage those works and services. This is really what the focus of that conversation was, is Parks Urban Forest Strategy Area. It's a really great tree image of a tree falling, but also the planting program and working with our development community to ensure that the trees that are planted the best way possible. And we want to seek to move our tree planting program from the 190 that we're currently seeing to 300 plus in any one given year. And so see again in the capital impact, there's a capital requirement, and that's based on that staff report that I brought back earlier this year, talk about the investment, both short-term and long-term, to see the net gains within our urban forest canopy. I'm looking ahead, reinstate the arborist position as I talked about, the tree protection bylaw update, hoping to work hand in hand with our partners in development services. They run through those areas, really focused around tree protection, public tree protection, as well as private land, identifying criteria for protection around circumference of tree, so age of tree at breast height, to ensure that we're protecting trees that have offered canopy. I think right now the bylaw is very kind of open in terms of as long as you have a number of trees of any style or size or height or age within your land, that you can cut down another. And we really want to refocus that to protect some of the older trees, the trees that are actually providing that great benefit in terms of canopy cover to our community. And then working through some SDS SDS bylaw updates around our natural trails, and then planting standards to improve some of those planting standards in the development area, just to make sure that we achieve the greatest longevity of those natural assets as possible. Stormwater, I already kind of gave away the good news on this one. So no real big changes in stormwater, except for the reallocation for the catch basin program. So moved a little bit of funding out of storm that was otherwise not utilized to its fullest to continue on the service expansion within the catch basin. Catch basins are vitally important in terms of sedimentation control, and catching any materials that we don't want in our natural environment prior to the entry. Just want to make sure those are clean and able to perform as best as possible within that work, and do a number of them within a program. So we hope to, at least what we're aiming to be at is attending every catch basin at least once in a 5-year turnaround across the entire city. Solid waste services. Big picture here is that the overall household unit rate is projected to increase by $2 in 2026. This increase is directly linked to the Comox Strathcona Waste Management tipping fee increase. The single family household rate will increase to $359.50, and the multifamily rate to a flat $326 in 2026. It's a direct flow through for us. Staff were reluctant to complete this increase without, or reluctant to not provide this increase flow through, just given that our conversations thus far with the regional district around the solid waste service and the 5-year financial plan is a bit up in the air. They don't have clearly defined what the financial outlook is going to look for the service. And so, $2 on 10,000 units is only about $20,000. I mean, at the end of the day, in terms of the overall budget, it's not a net and a huge net impact, but we don't know what the future looks. So as the service grows and as the needs at the regional level increase relative to diversion or contamination, we need to understand what that looks like, and this allows us to soften that if we in fact are required to absorb some of that through the service. But overall, from a contract services perspective, from the service delivery model for our automated system, we're moving in a really positive direction, and things seem to be moving really well. From a card exchange program perspective, the bylaw now is in place, so it's $65 administrative fee for a card exchange. The card exchange program has been phenomenal right from the giddy up. Quote me on that one, giddy up. Sorry. We've only did this year in 2025, we did 82 exchanges total across the 10,000 units. So there's 30 some odd thousand carts that have been deployed to our community, and we've only had 82 exchanges. Half of those exchanges were for multifamily who were downsizing their carts. So from a deployment to 2 years into the program, the carts seem to be deployed in a reasonable way, and we are using our successes and our lessons learned to help other communities that are embarking on this journey at the infancy of deployment through automated, and we continue to share those successes, and we specifically with Campbell River as they move to go to automated in 2026 and beyond.
Just to clarify, when you say about half of those were to downsize because of multi-family, if we were to look at those only 80 that were changed, were most of them downsizing, or was it like maybe 50-50?
Yeah, actually, it was most downsizing. It was actually greater than that. It was probably 80% were downsizing, and most of what we were seeing is the recycle going from a 240 to a 120. Just not as much product that they're needing to recycle, and they have space issues in the multifamily sector.
And was it all 3 carts that can be downsized, or was it just the
That's organic and recycling are the 2 that can be downsized. Garbage is already 120
Right.
liters, and there's no downsizing from there.
Right.
Yeah, there's no
Sure.
upsizing as well. So we just, if you need an additional garbage chart, it's usually a double service, and you end up with a second bin.
Fair enough. Mr. Carter.
Through the mayor, Mr. Shaw and I had a conversation a little while ago. Wanted to remind council that we've raised there is grant opportunities available related to organics carts. The city has engaged with the province on that and have been notified that that program is currently on hold and up for review. We engaged our MLA about that and continue to be in contact with both ministry staff and the MLA. It would be a great benefit to us to get a grant for that, and we just will stay live to that. Staff are checking in on a regular basis with the province, and we'll notify council. So again, no, just like every grant, no no guarantee that'll happen, but as a leader in the organics area, we're going to stay on top of that, and it has significant financial benefits if possible to be implemented.
Great, thanks for that. Next slide really nods to that term about leading in the industry. In terms of organic diversion, the city is leading all partners in the Strathcona waste management sector at 68% diversion for organics, far exceeding the next closest with 36%, I think, is the remaining amount going to garbage. So we're at a diversion rate of 2.17. It's phenomenal. Like these are the numbers you write home about.
I was going to say a Facebook post would be really cool for this one as well.
That's great. Yeah, and typically, you'll see that the onset of an organic program, you'll see high execution, and then those numbers will start to drop year over year. We've been holding fairly firm in terms of these numbers, and we're really excited about that. We continue to offer 2 additional programs within the solid waste portfolio, and one is the annual community cleanup on Earth Day every year. So 2026 will be the 3rd annual of that event, as well as the community drop-off at the operations center twice a year for about a month to 6 weeks, both in the spring and the fall. There's an organic bin that's there, and residents are invited to bring any additional waste that they may have. And this program has been hugely successful in terms of additional diversion, but also mitigating those issues that we may have with additional leaves that because of the limitations of the organic bin only being to 360 liters, there is an opportunity there for individuals to bring that waste, and it is used all the time, every day. There's always someone there. So I think it's about another week, or this weekend might be the last weekend. So those listening online, if you've got some materials, bring them over. We're happy to take them for you. There'll be staff on site to support that transition as well. So capital project summary, the 2026 capital program for operational services, not including water and sewer, is proposed at just under 4.2 million. And I'll get into some of those details. So some of the naming, just bring clarity in terms of what that is. So end of life traffic signal renewal program. This 2026 focus is the 5th and Clifton intersection. So that's the funding for the renewal of the aerials or the overheads, as well as any electrical conduits and the realignment and the additional 4th leg crossing at 5th Street. So that's well underway. You'll see that continue through the program, and it really warms my heart to see that it's funded through the asset management reserve, because that's the SIP funding really coming to life, and we're seeing the net benefit of that reserve direct in infrastructure renewal in our community. And we're going to start, why not, with the biggest intersection in the middle of town on 5th Street, top of the hill on the other side of the bridge, and we're going to do our best to get that done on time and under budget, to quote our director of engineering. The CMP work, obviously, year over year, we've got money pushed out to about 2028. The program really will come to fruition at the end of 2027. So a bit of a placeholder there. And as I articulated earlier, we're hoping to achieve some great success in that program to get that done and wrapped up sooner than later, which will draw some opportunity for potentially re-envisioning what a new 5-year plan would look like with the next council, if so desired. So continuing down some of those areas, fleet has risen to about 1.175, 687,000, 89,000, 81,000, about 690,000, we'll call it, straight to light duty EV conversion. So we're looking to expedite, as we talked about renewals. We usually do about 3 to 4 EV renewals every year, and we're going to increase that to 7 to meet those goals. So that's great. And another one we'll really see here is the bridge renewal program. That's a continuation of bridge renewals that we'll see as we continue. I've got some slides to really get into the depth of that.
On the EV renewal, when you're saying you're increasing the amount that we're purchasing, does that mean that the older gas powered or fossil fuel powered vehicles are they just being sold off, or are they end of life? Just kind of getting a sense of what happens with those guys.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's kind of multifaceted. But it's always a great question. Historically, we didn't have an abundance of end-of-life vehicles that were useful. A lot of our inventory to date was extremely aged, and so when it hit end of life, it was out the door because it just cost too much to maintain. We're hoping to optimize that through the asset management strategy with respect to fleet, so that we would do renewals for small light-duty vehicles on a 12-year return. So the vehicle would hit about 12 years old, and then would see the end of its life, and we'd have enough money within reserve to renew. That affords us an opportunity to keep the asset and redeploy the asset internally for a short period of time to cover off any leasing or rentals that we may require for our bulk season in the spring and summer, when we bring on all the student staff and the seasonal staff, help deploy, utilize those assets. And then, so as we age out, take after the city manager there. As we age out assets and renew, that stock gets replenished with new old stock, and then that stock, after 2 to 3 years of reuse, then gets sold. And that gets sold at open market. Yeah, and really as well, like I think historically, when we purchased an asset, not to get too deep into fleet, but when we purchased an asset for a particular group, it sat there for its life. And so now we're looking at optimization. Some groups are high users, some groups are not. So we want to move those assets to ensure that they're used equally throughout their tenure within the organization. Good example of that is our standby unit is the highest. We've converted that one first and foremost. It sees the most lane kilometers and it uses the most gas. So we converted that to electric right away, but it'll see high traffic, high volume, high kilometers in a short period of time. And then we'll move that asset to someone who doesn't necessarily use an asset like custodial services and rec, where they put on a very low amount of kilometers. So it'll age and kilometer out relatively evenly across the board.
That's fantastic to hear. Thank you.
So moving right into the CMP, I just wanted to articulate and kind of highlight some of the great work that's been happening with the CMP in terms of the work and the implementation strategy that was built in 2023. So the city's total cycling network existing by facility type in 2023 was measured at 25 lane kilometers. And with the council approved 5-year implementation plan, the capital program aimed at adding an additional 41 lane kilometers for a total of 66 to be completed by the end of 2027. In 2026, we'll see focus on 3 particular areas. One is Valley View Drive in Idians through the Hobson. So Idians Way from the city limit all the way down to Hobson, down Idians and Valley View, and then 20th Street through from Cumberland to Willamar, and then as well Morrison Creek Bridge on Arden, which will connect across Arden Road and get you into the First Street area, which will be a really nice addition to not only the active transportation plan, but as well as walkability within that area. I know there's been some historic paths that have been kind of cut through trails that have been otherwise not available to the community most recently. So that will provide that opportunity and that gapping. So we've been working through with some available funding through design. That project is designed and ready for deployment right away in 2026. We have our environmental permitting both from provincial and from the feds already in place, given our understanding of that particular creek system and the species that are in it. We have all approvals in place ready to go for deployment. So we're well in hand on that. So we hope to see those 3 great projects through the CMP in 2026.
CMP, is there, is Willamar on the CMP, the last bits of Willamar to 26?
In 2026? Or?
No, I'm sorry. The street 26th from the roundabout to 26. I'm trying to remember if that's in our plans.
Willamar is in the cycling network plan in terms of the overall plan. Willamar in itself wasn't the remainder from the
In the 5-year?
wasn't in the 5-year plan. Yeah. So from the Cumberland to 26th, that wasn't in the 5-year plan.
Okay, thanks for that. Or is there still a funding source from the provincial government?
For the BCAT?
Yeah.
Yeah, the BC Active Transportation Funding. It's been suspended, as I articulated a little bit earlier today, for
Right.
2025. So the 2025 intake was suspended due to financial limitations. And so we're hoping in 2026 it'll be brought back and we can continue to apply for that.
Thanks.
Yeah, we've been extremely successful through that program over the years. So we really hope that they bring that one back. It's done a great deal in terms of moving some of those initiatives forward.
Through the mayor to Councillor Frisch, I sent an email to council earlier about a meeting in New Year with the Ministry of Transportation and Transit. The island director has advised that that program is under significant review. And so I think given how important support for active transportation and the budget implications for us, that will be a topic I think that we want to be very clear to talk about the successes. But I just want to stress that these are important budget items that this council has prioritized. So I think continuing on that messaging and how important that program is, especially for our municipality, we'll have support to council on that for that meeting.
Great, thank you. The next slide here is really about fleet EV conversion. Some great imagery from the fleet that we currently have in hand. We have 5 electric vehicles that were replaced in 2025. We aim to replace 7 light duty vehicles in 2026. I just have to say that overall, the staffing group has welcomed these additions. I think there was a bit of hesitation at the beginning, but the Ford Lightnings have been a great addition to the workforce. The staff love them. They provide a multitude of opportunities for usage. They have plugins. If you've ever seen them, they have plugins in the back and plugins in the front and plugins everywhere. So you can use all of your electric tools that you need. They provide great value in terms of the city's network, in terms of traveling, the overall power that's required to traverse within our community. There's great redundancy within it. We currently have 10 chargers, so it's 5 dual head chargers at operations as we cycle the existing fleet through that. And obviously, as we continue to grow, we'll need additional ones. But I said the only downside, I think, from an operational perspective is some of the vehicles, especially the standby unit that gets used on weekends, will need charge time. And so only having a level 2 charger at operations means that that vehicle is now out for the next day. So on the Monday on its return, the battery is typically depleted over a weekend deployment. And so it takes between 12 to 14 hours to get a full charge on it. So it basically sits for the first day and then has to be charged in anticipation of, but those are just some operational things that we're working through as we continue to evolve and adopt the electric conversion. So it's great. That's great imagery of the bridge replacement program. So just looking back from 2022 to 2025, those bridges in our community have done a great deal in terms of ensuring continuity within our trail systems and our networks and access to natural spaces for our community. And they're a great inexpensive way to improve some of those wood assets that aren't necessarily aging well. And this aluminum structure is fairly inexpensive, locally built and deployed. And we could continue to see great success with this particular model. And looking ahead, continuing through with Hobson Park, there's an upstream and downstream in Bear James, so it's not a duplicate. There's actually 2, and I thank our team and our finance for noting that, Ballard, Morrison. So we continue to renew those assets, and you'll see a fairly reasonable number within the capital plan for that, which I believe is also funded through the asset management reserve. Capital continued. I think I have some imagery for these ones as well, but really table format, looking at cemetery and the cycling network plan, which I have another slide for as well, and then gateway signage. So 2026 gateway signage, 2027 is a large number for gateway signage. That's looking to have a very inclusive conversation with our partners in Comox First Nations to update the one on the bypass, or not the bypass, sorry, the entrance, on 29th, to be something that's a bit more robust and a bit more meaningful in terms of heritage and cultural acknowledgement. So there's a bit of work to be done with that. And then the last one, PSD citywide, the service request module. So that's the service request will be completed, and we're working on phase 2 of this, which will be the work order management system, will be the next level. So now we're tracking very well and very intimately in terms of the works and services that are requested of us, but the work order management system will then be able to track and manage. We'll be able to convert service requests into work orders, tie them to GLs, tie them to time sheets, create KPIs and metrics. We'll have spreadsheets upon spreadsheets. It'll be great. So we do operationally look after not only the maintenance of the cemetery, but we do the capital works for the cemetery as well. So a lot of great work within the cemetery master plan that really guides the work that we've done to date and as we continue to do. So looking ahead, we'll be starting the development of Section Q, adding 160 niche plots in 2026 with the potential for growth of about 1,500 plots in those particular areas. And then beyond 2027 and 29, you'll see duplicate numbers in the budget for 120 new crypts, and those lawn crypts, you can see installation kind of on the bottom right-hand corner next to the road. That's what they look like as they go in ahead of time to create optimization of space within the cemetery. The pedestrian cycling pavement renewal program continues to drive forward. And it's broader than just paving, right? So we know that just cycling, some great examples of collaborative projects were a lot of the projects we did this year with Lake Trail, with Headquarters Road in Vanier, so the repaving as well as the addition of the bike lanes as well as the pedestrian crossing, they all layer upon themselves, so it's really nice to see. An updated map from our GIS. I'm not terribly technically savvy, but there's an older version of this in our GIS system, and I added the newer version. I wanted to show the overlay between the two, but I can tell you for sure there's a lot more green than there is red, comparatively speaking to the last time we did the overview in 2019. So we're moving in the right direction. Our roads are turning green. Back to the point that Councillor Morin made, we're making headway. Our collector and arterial roads are our focus thus far. And the pavement renewal for 2026 is articulated here in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, focusing on Cumberland Road between Arden and Piercy, 8th Street between 5th and Cliff, England Ave between 8th and 5th, Cliff between 5th and 3rd, Lake Trail to coincide with our work happening with the trail system there and the active transportation work, and then back road around the hairpin at Marsland seems to be deteriorating quite a bit in that particular area as well. In the proposed projects, you'll see pedestrian network improvement. So we're also proposing to add sidewalk on the south side on Dingwall between McLaughlin and Crookshank, and that will tie in nicely to the Dingwall stairs. Currently, if you're walking up Dingwall from the park, you got to cross the road. I think you got to leapfrog across the road around 3 times to get to the Dingwall stairs, and then you're on the wrong side of the road. So this will provide continuity and add flow and pedestrian security within that corridor. So I think it dated myself when I said leapfrog. Go ahead.
Is that an area that's considered in the school safety piece as one of the areas of attention?
Yes, it's great comment. It actually is. Yeah, in
Yeah.
terms of safe active travels to school, there's mapping that pre-exists for the particular school that's there, and that is a route, especially now that the Dingwall stairs are in place. They no longer have to traverse around, and they can actually cut through the Dingwall stairs and down. And right now, to get to the bottom of the stairs, if you were trying to get to school, you kind of have to just get across the road.
No, I'm a little biased because that's where my grandson goes to school in that area, and I've noticed that it's really not the best. So I'm glad it's getting some attention. Thanks.
Yeah, and I will say, like, we're trying to portray sidewalk renewal, sidewalk installation, and gap filling within the financial plan in terms of asset continuity and looking at our pedestrian network. There's some kind of unconscious gapping that exists, and that's really what we're trying to, it may not necessarily have been that there may be that there is sidewalk. It's just you have to cross the road 3 or 4 times to go in a particular direction are they trying to achieve. And so adding a small section of sidewalk will create that continuity and that fluidity and provide the safety and security that we're hoping to achieve within that network. So these are some of the proposed projects for 2026. Traffic calming program. You'll see a year over year, as I articulated at the beginning of the program here tonight, looking to prioritize and set forth opportunity for this to be a cyclical program. We expect to see continuation of interest within the traffic calming policy, and we are working on the First Street aspects right now. We're hoping to bring that back to council after we finish with community engagement and design. So 2026, as proposed, would be upon council adoption, would be the First Street infrastructure. 2027 would be Idian's Way in Suffolk in terms of a roundabout. 2028 would be Back Road Phase 2, so the guardrails up at the top end. towards the city limit. And then 2029 thus far right now would be 3rd Street in terms of finishing the roundabout that's there that is in a temporary or trial format, completing that. That's just based on what our current inventory and our current policy reviews have articulated in terms of point systems. So as the years go and as new individuals bring forward areas of concern, we would re-rank those based on those priorities and based on those evaluations. The Safe Active Schools program, so money within the budget in terms of output for 2026, 2027, and 2028 for those 3 schools. We're hoping to see some great input from the community and the school board in terms of expectations for renewal and amendments to the linear infrastructure within the frontage of those schools. And so this program would support that. And as I articulated, the sidewalk renewal program on a continuation to have that broader evaluation, look to the TMP that currently exists, which does articulate some sidewalk gapping, but also acknowledging the STP is currently in place, the strategic transportation plan, and looking to identify, I know a lot of acronyms, I'm trying to stop, looking to identify a continuation of that program year over year and fill in those gaps on the long term. And then the urban canopy program. So starting out small at 50 and working our way up to 100,000 over the duration of this budget. Looking first and foremost to develop the program of request a boulevard tree, and then the tree voucher program for 2026, and then grow that program beyond in future capital. So quick little image of the Safe Active Schools program. So some of the great ideas that we have coming out of that is really, as you see on the right hand side of your screen there, is clearly marking, delineating the road networks as you come in. There's some really great torch down thermal products that are out there now that could provide great opportunity to articulate that this is a school zone, clearly identify. We've done some great work historically in terms of painting, signage, and clearly marking the school zones. This really would be an extension of the work that I think was done on Lake Trail. That was part of that traffic calming initiative that came out of there, but it just doesn't really sit, like it doesn't really shine through, and this would be an addition or amendment to that. And so look to continue that through our program and through our deployment with all the schools. These are the school zones in terms of routing. We just talked about walkable distances, and so these are the Safe Active School travel program routing for each of the schools that are currently being reviewed. My apologies, my computer is frozen. So Ecole Elementary, Courtney Elementary, and Valley View Elementary are the first schools to participate in the Safe Active Schools program. So those are the particular zones that we're looking at in terms of how individuals are traversing and getting to those schools. You can see they're quite large, quite broad, and so there's a lot of information to consider in terms of where we're focusing our time and effort. Again, Parks Urban Forest Canopy, as I spoke to a number of times through the presentation, looking to get to that 300 tree by 2028 with the new voucher and the infill program, really extend beautification, working on those pollinator zones within our community, which seem to be well received, and continuing to plant trees for our future. With that, it's questions.
I'm asking
Councillor
most of
Moore.
the questions tonight. So could you just say a little bit more about the voucher and infill program? Because I'm kind of excited about that, because that's something I've been asking about. Just in terms of those, particularly West Courtney, but it will eventually impact many parts of the city.
Yeah, absolutely. So like broadly speaking, what we're hoping to do in terms of a voucher program is provide individuals with a amount of money that, or a particular destination or location they can purchase a tree that has a redeemable factor with the city. So the city's contributing to that, and that would be a plantable asset within anywhere on their property. The requested tree is request a public tree on the frontage. That would be a part of a broader initiative for public assets, broadening the public asset deployment of trees within our community. As you know, not everyone through development gets a new tree. The boulevard trees are very specific in terms of their deployment, but the beautification of our community and if we're really to achieve the goals that are articulated within our planning documents, we really need to do a lot of planting on private property and property frontage to meet those criterias. And so those will be those encouraging opportunities for individuals to come and seek those initiatives through the community or through the city and see assets attributed to the public realm.
And when do we anticipate that rolling out then?
So we're hoping to bring back a report in the new year in 2026
Right.
to really articulate what that program could look like, the staffing investments, and really the website design and the interface within a financial world in terms of how those vouchers will be distributed or paid for, and then working with our community partners in terms of our commercial areas, who's going to stock to those stock that we're hoping to achieve, what those numbers look like, and what those species look like specifically within the confines of what we're hoping to achieve for growth in our community.
Right, thank you.
Councillor McCollum.
Thanks for the presentation, Kyle. First of all, I want to appreciate just providing the follow-up on the analyst position from last year. That's nice to kind of see that expanded on and exactly how that's landed in terms of bringing that online. So thanks for highlighting that. I have a few questions. I just was waiting till the end. So I guess my first question was around the solid waste slide. Lots of great news there. Big change when we first talked about bringing in the multi-cart system. The advice was to not do that in an election year, and I think that even predates your time with our council, I think, or not exactly sure who provided that advice. I think, but I think they were right, because there was a lot of challenges, but I think it's landed well. And I mean, this slide is great testament to why that system is a benefit to the city and the solid waste service. I had kind of two questions around that. One is, we are seeing a reduction in how much solid waste, like actual garbage in the small can, that's going to the landfill, and that's the most expensive thing that we throw in those carts. And I'm just wondering if we adjusted the projected tipping fees upward because the cost is going up. There's an increase, I think it's $5 a ton. So I assume that that's what the inflation amount is. But I'm curious to know how close our tonnage is based on what our projections was. And my assumption is that if we've charged more, that's going in the solid waste reserve to kind of balance things out. Although maybe I see one head nodding, so okay, good. So I guess my question is how close are we in that estimate? And I'm not suggesting that we adjust that down if things are going well, but I think it would be good for us to understand how solid the contribution is to that reserve, if at all.
So I think we could tag team it a bit here. I could probably answer. You want to go first?
I can go first on that one. Since that reserve doesn't have a authorized contribution to it, it comes at the year end when we get all our actuals in. It has not had to draw on the reserve, so it is filling. And there isn't a specific targeted amount to be in there. So it's hard to judge, is the amount going in good or bad? It is going in, and it provides that buffer for the future if we do see those changes.
As a percentage, like our forecasted tonnage versus actuals, is it, within 10%?
I can't comment on that.
Okay. Do you know, Kyle?
I don't know the exact percentage in terms of tonnages, but I do know that we projected a safe margin in year one in anticipation of data acquisition and collection. And as you can see, our diversion rates are extremely high. The overall tonnage we're where historically we didn't have to have funding allocated or situated within our program was for the organic, because the organic was collected at a no charge and it was unlimited. And so now, whereby we're increasing the total tonnage that we're collecting and going to the service, it's just at a different volume and it's at a different rate. So it's a little bit cheaper for the organic than it is the solid waste. I think it's 155 for organic per ton, 165 now for solid waste. But the overall amount of waste that's being collected as a whole is still relatively close. It's the diversion rate that is extremely high. So we're just paying a little bit less. So the amount that we projected in terms of needing to fund the service isn't exponentially above what we need to run the service. We are running in the positive, which is great. So we didn't underestimate, but we're not so far over that we need to come back and adjust downward within the fees and charges just yet. We haven't also had to include increases until now. And this is a direct flow through, not knowing necessarily where the regional district may lie in terms of future years for increases. And we didn't want to end up in a world where in 2026, when the new financial plan came out, that we had to make a significant leap in one direction or another. But we can always come back and have that conversation.
Yeah, I think it would be good information to have. It doesn't have to exist within this discussion, but yeah, understanding how those like two expenses are trending and how close our projections are, I think would be useful. You know, I can say with a fair amount of confidence based on what I've seen at the solid waste board table that tipping fees for garbage are going up. It's not a one increase in this financial plan, and I think organics, the current rate is probably a little more stable. So yeah, so like maybe a little analysis on that at some point would be useful, just to have a better understanding. And then on that topic too, we had a lot of challenges with contamination in the organic stream. Where, you know, heard all kinds of stories about what end up in there. I think coffee pods were the number one issue. How is that going? Have we had to do any enforcement on it? Is that settling out? Are we getting better compliance?
It's great. It's a great question. If I can, I'll speak back to just closure on the first question. You really spoke to a point that kind of resonates with me, specifically as staff, one who's overlooking this particular area of funding for solid waste. Understanding the intimacy that the RD is going through in terms of that, those costs are projected to rise, really predicates the staff's desire to not make significant changes in the budget yet. If there's an opportunity through those projections to understand where they're going to land within a 5-year horizon, we can project our tonnages based on historic values, and there's a potential that we could absorb some of those increases within the existing rate structure based on adjustments of tonnages that we're now trending in the right direction. So whereby now we're reserving, we may draw back on the amount that we push to reserve and not have to require an amendment to the rate intimately to compensate for the lack of value that we, or lack of funding that we need or required to operate the service. So
Yeah, makes
we're on the
sense.
same page.
Yeah.
On that one. In terms of contamination, pods are obviously a contamination. You are correct that we see all sorts of different issues within different streams in terms of contamination. We're still working very hard and diligently as a staffing group with our contractor to ensure that the contamination management strategy that they're to provide for us is meeting our expectations, and we'll be bringing back a report to council to provide an update on that information. But in terms of that, that's a continuation of process we're working through to ensure that we're meeting the expectations not only of ourselves, of our contractor, but of our service provider at the regional level to ensure our contamination rates continue to drop and meet those expectations. In terms of follow-up with residents, thus far, we've continued to be positive in terms of our contamination management strategy, in terms of respectful dialogue and conversation, either that through staff or bylaw services, through follow-up where required as required. And we haven't had to take any exponential increases in terms of one particular resident or another through the progressionary programs of the bylaw.
That's good news. Glad to hear that. Adam has his light on, Mayor.
Information hot off the press. So the reserve was created in 2024, and that was the first contribution. 130,000 is in it at the end of 2024.
Okay, thanks. That's a good
We're close.
number to know.
I didn't know the exact, but I knew where.
Yeah, that's good. Around 100,000. Okay.
Yeah.
I have a couple more questions and I don't see any of the lights on.
Yeah, the floor is all yours until other lights.
Yeah, so the cycling projects for 2026. That's the Valley View and that bridge over Arden Creek, which is really exciting. That's gonna be a really important connection to Lake Trail and Arden from that neighborhood. So that's great to see how ready we are to deploy that. One thing that jumped out for me, I think it was in the table before, is we've, done a great job of rolling out this program and but most of the work that we've done with this over and looking forward is a lot of painted buffer. And I think it's 0 kilometers of protected lanes in that plan, which is the plan that council approved. But now looking at that, these painted lanes are certainly the most economical way to get bike lanes in place, but they also provide the least amount of protection. And we did get a briefing note a while back about the deployment of some concrete barriers, but I don't see it highlighted here. And I'm just wondering if you have any information to share about that. And there is, sorry. Oh, in 2027, there's 1.95. Okay, somehow I looked right past that when I was looking at the slide. But yeah, if you could provide an update on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great. Great commentary. Protected bike lanes, fully protected, constructed linear asset, protected assets are relatively expensive, to the tune of over $1 million, if not $1.5 million per kilometer. I think what we learned from our time on 17th Street, it's fairly costly. There are the painted options that create placemaking and use parking, and so those are fairly less expensive. And it's a continuation of the 5th Street program, where you saw it just continues that fluidity of movement and expectation of where the cyclist will be as in terms of an interface, but not in a protected format. And so an interim to the interim would be barriers, as you discussed. And so understanding what the current limitations of barriers were in terms of achieving barriers or attaining barriers on the island, staff worked with their local vendor to build a barrier that's supportive of our infrastructure in our locations in terms of deployments that'll be cost effective, as well as utilize our existing delineators or flexible delineators within those barriers. So we've made a mold that's specific to Courtney for deployment, and the briefing note articulated some trial deployments both on 17th Street on the park frontage side. And so we're just waiting for the park construction to conclude for
Great.
deployment of that, as well as on deployment on Dove Creek Place. Continuation of works there. And so we're hoping to understand going into the snow and ice control season, particularly what the cost of maintenance are with respect to those type of asset deployments, and whether or not the current infrastructure or the current inventory in terms of equipment would be sufficient to meet those needs. So it's a bit of a test and a pilot, and it's to come. The weather's been a bit challenging recently. Current staff are currently deployed on Back Road finishing the guardrails, but it is on the list for this year, if not early in January, to deploy those in those trial areas and then collect some data and some costing to understand what a broader deployment might look like of those particular assets in the anticipation of adding additional protected bike facilities in our community without the extreme expense of going to a complete reconstruction of that particular corridor.
Yeah, that's great information. And some of that now I'm remembering from the briefing note, but it was a while ago. And when I read that briefing note, one thing that came to mind is that we have some painted lanes toward the end of Fitzgerald that are beside roadway with no sidewalk, and there's no parking there either. And it occurred to me that that would be a really great place, because I see people walking in the bikeway quite a bit too. And it seems like a fairly uncomplicated area to add them that would probably deliver a pretty quality increase in safety for people that are not in cars along there. And I'll turn my mic off because I see.
Yeah, great. Thanks for that input. And just for clarity, Fitzgerald is June 21st and 26th. Yep. Yep.
All right, thanks, Councillor McCullum and Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, I'll just chime in on the same subject, and I know I brought this to your attention before, but since we're in budget meetings, might as well bring it up again. There's some bike lane on 5th Street and 17th. They're just the painted lanes. They're protected by parking in both cases. But when you come up to a lamppost or a hydro pole, there's an insanely small space to squeeze through. And what I think we need to do, this is completely in the weeds for this meeting, but what I think we need to do is not allow parking right in front of those poles. And so that's the best I can, you figure that out, but, and I know this is a budget meeting, but I think it really needs to happen at some point. I don't know if we need more money in the budget. I'm happy to put it in.
It's great feedback. We thank you for that. I don't think no parking signs or no parking restrictions in those particular areas would cost a terrible amount of money. So I would argue that within the CNP network capital fund, there'd be enough money to support.
Yeah, and it might be worth using some of your flexible bollards and a piece of concrete or even just some paint, you know. I think people really appreciate when there are painted lines showing where they can park and where the end of the parking is. And I don't know, I enjoy that anyways. It might just be all it takes.
Yeah, some gore in that, as you say, paint would be.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Councillor Frisch. Back to Councillor McCullum.
This is my last question. So there are some great highlighting of safety improvements around schools that we have done some work on and have some work planned, which is really great. One of the improvements that we implemented in front of Arden School that I thought was great was the flexible delineators on the yellow line, which lasted, a little while before they weren't there anymore. But I noticed driving around other communities that they're very common, and I'm sure that they do get damaged everywhere that they get deployed, whether it's in our community or elsewhere. But they really slow traffic down in school zones. I mean, I would love to see those in front of Courtney Elementary. I wonder if through the engagement at Valley View that we'll have, see a similar request come up. But even with the cost of having to replace those from time to time, I do think it's something that we should put some emphasis on, because I can't think of a better way to get a vehicle to slow down in a school zone than make the lane feel that much slower. And it's really hard to miss. So I just, I didn't see any of them in your pictures, but I know we have given them a try, and I don't know if you want to comment on maybe why we had them at Arden, and I don't think there are any there right now. Maybe we took them out last winter and they didn't go back in. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's a great question. Great comments. I can offer that we, as staff, we didn't remove it. It was removed. That particular location doesn't last very long once it's reinstalled. Sometimes it's hours before it is then taken back out. So I think for us as a staffing group, in anticipation of the Safe After Schools program, we're really looking back to the community to get that kind of feedback, to understand what's high value, what's important, what's meaningful, what's impactful, and what both parents, students, teachers, and the community feel to be value in terms of impact in the infrastructure. And I think to the point that you've just made, it's a potential of looking at a different asset in the same similar location, but even a flexible delineator that can take 93 hits versus the sandwich board that was there that can take 1 or 2 would be a better use of funds.
Or a stiff wind or something.
I mean, it's tilting to the ground. So we're trying. So there's a 10-inch spike in 4 corners trying to hold that thing down. So thank you.
Excellent. Yeah.
A couple more.
Councillor Frisch, I guess.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to sum up. You're done, right? Like with your presentation? No, you're not done.
I've got
good.
water and sewer coming afterwards. So, but
You've done the section. So this,
Operations.
yeah. So this section is complete.
Well,
to be
I
clear.
just want to share that I'm also really impressed with the work, or not just around CMP, but around, garbage and parks and like everything. It's really awesome. And I know it's a huge job for you. So thanks for that. I don't want to just harp on you every time something about bikes comes up.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Frisch and Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Thanks very much, and I would echo the same thing. I'm always impressed by the ingenuity and the way you can stretch dollar and find efficiencies within operations. It's a pleasant surprise every time. I wanted to just ask a bit about the EV chargers, and I think it was interesting you're noting that the weekend truck sort of sits there on Monday because it does take a while with level 2 to get it sort of up and running again. Do we ever consider using any of the public level 3s, which would allow it to be in a much shorter time, sort of? And I guess the other question is, if we're going to be acquiring more large capacity, big battery vehicles like F-150s, whether having our own level 3 going forward makes sense. It would allow that vehicle to be operational sort of more days of the week, which is a factor to be considered.
That's a great question. Thank you for that. In Mr. Davidson's program, he talked about the EV chargers in terms of works and services. And I believe the financial plan shows 2028 for the first level 3 to go in, and that would be at operational services. So
Right.
it is within the plan. We will hit a limit of inventory for fleet assets that will require in terms of both redundancy, emergent response, as well as timeliness of recharge, where we'll hit that plateau in 2028 seems to be that projected timeline for that. In terms of utilizing public, we haven't currently. There is a bit of a reputational piece that goes along with that. We have to sit a staffer in a truck for an hour. I mean, we could drop them off and pick them up, but we have enough redundancy within our current fleet inventory that we can currently pull that asset out of functional use and recharge it. The net benefit to the community in terms of GHG reduction and efficiencies is still there, and we're not at a loss. But you are right. As the inventory rises and we hit 20, 30, we'll end up with just under 50 light duty vehicles that will all be electric. There'll be a need to charge them in a short period of time, and a level 3 will be that way. We'll look to understand what the technologies are at the time. I know that level 3 chargers, like direct off the grid, are fairly expensive, and not only that, but the kilowatt per hour is extremely high in that scenario as well. So as we look to the future, we hope to understand what trickle charging off the grid to a battery support to give us level 3 boost might look like. So then we can reduce the cost of electricity on the long term. So there's a lot of things that are emerging, a lot of grant opportunities, and there's a lot of people knocking on our door. From an email perspective, I know the city manager gets a few and I get a few, and they're just like waiting for us to bite on some of those. So we're into the world of having a plan, having goals, having some capital monies designated, so we can go and have real conversations with those individuals about what that could look like for us, what our current needs are, our future needs, with some granting behind it, which will go a long way. So thank you for that question. Great
Okay,
question.
thanks. I mean, it's great to hear that you're considering many different options. The trickle charge to a battery that can then fast charge out. That's a really interesting approach. So yeah, thanks.
Add solar to that, and we might be self-sufficient at one point. But
Fantastic. Well, it looks like your first section is done.
all right, so moving into the utilities, a little bit of a tag team here. I know that we've got Adam standing by and Chris standing by from a capital perspective, but I'll just launch into operating quite quickly here. Don't have a lot of slides to go with water and sewer because there's not a lot of change in water and sewer. The change in terms of water and sewer are within the financials with respect to the rates, which are established by bylaw, which came out of the rate review, which will put us in a good financial place. But in terms of operating, year over year, not a significant amount of change in terms of funding requirements. So there's some internal transfer pieces that really sit within the financial world, but from an operating perspective, no big changes in sewer. We're in a really good place in terms of where we are, both from a storm, like an underground linear infrastructure perspective, from a financial perspective in operating, both linear storm, sanitary conveyance, and water distribution as a whole. The budgets are operationally fairly sound. The KPIs and metrics for execution of those works and services, both reactive and proactive, are also very, very established. Those are ones that we've been working on in the background in terms of they're very highly regulated. So some of the metrics are already predetermined for us for the amount of work that we do. And we've been able to stretch those dollars quite far within those programs. And you'll see that here as well. I think a point that Adam had asked me to draw attention to was the kind of the thing at the bottom there was the budget transfers to reserve, and you'll see the asset manager, the SIP contributions grow over time until 2030. And then this kind of points back to we're working on the water master plan and the sewer master plan in 2026 in the engineering world, which will define what those capital works will look like relative to this program. And that will launch into reforecasting the total expenditures within that reserve. So you'll see it's quite high at 3.9 million by 2030, but there'll be a lot of capital programs. Yeah, I get some nods across the room there that will eat up those funding. But the great thing about that, and from the dialogue that's occurred both yesterday and today, is that will be reserve funded works through SIP, which won't require net new money through the capital program, through general taxation to feed into those. So overall, sewer is in really, really good place. The fees. And this is direct from the water rate review. Fees are increasing from 2025 to 2026 at the flat rate and continue to rise to create operational flow in terms of funding requirements. As we know, historically speaking, in sewer, the operating was underfunded relative to its frontage counterpart, but as a whole, the budget was equalized because it was underused frontage that was offsetting operations. So this is that correction, and that's why you see that the frontage isn't increasing, because the frontage is at its sustainable number that it's required in terms of reserve contribution, and it's the operating that sees the rise over time. So sanitary capital, as I articulated, it's a kind of a light program, but it's one that's continuing to grow. I know there's a big one in terms of South Sewer, and I'll pass that to Chris to talk to. The one at the top really is, for me, it's the sanitary main reline extension. I like abbreviations, so now it's an SARLE. Sanitary reline or life extension program. We're looking to establish a asset management reserve program fund that's direct to life extension of our sanitary, our gravity sanitary system. And this program was one that will grow to about a $500,000 mark in the financial plan in perpetuity. It'll look to renew and improve through relining or trenchless technology for our sanitary gravity systems that do not require upgrade or renewal through capital works. So we have 300 and some odd, 350 linear kilometers of pipe in the ground. Not all of it needs to be renewed and upgraded through SHMU development or through growth needs. Some of it is just its age. It's at 70, 80, 90 years life. Structurally, it's still okay. And through video inspection, we've identified those opportunities to reline that through trenchless technology, which is far less expensive than a renewal, and done with robotics. Can maintain servicing, can happen while systems are in flow. We don't require any shutdown to do that. And it will specifically renew the asset, give it a useful life extension of 50 plus years, because it's a fiberglass resin-based liner that will be inserted within the system. It'll create coefficiency and flow factors, improvements within the overall system, as well as it will was the last piece I was, I&I. It will reduce the I&I that we currently see. We hit a peaking factor of 2 in our winter months, where we go from our low August seasonal inflows being a 1 factor, and in January, when it's raining the way that it's raining, we're hitting a 2 or a 2.1 factor of inflow, which means all that water goes to the wastewater treatment plant, which creates demand on the water treatment or the wastewater treatment system. And then through that costs the city money in terms of treatment costs. And so if we can reduce the amount of I&I significantly, we can reduce the annual requisition amount for the sewer service through the CVRD, through treatment costs quite substantially. And if you were to kind of run the numbers back, there's probably anywhere in an I&I factor on a per annum basis between $700 and $1 million of I&I that we pay for through treatment. And so if we can renew our assets, we can see a payback in dividends in the future. Campbell River has run a very successful program for I&I capture through Reline, and I believe it was run by who now is Spring, our new asset management manager, who ran the program in Campbell River. So we will seek to try and get some success from those wins that she's experienced in her time in Campbell River here in the city of Courtenay. The remaining projects here, aside from the $50,000 line item for sanitary operational improvements, static line item in the operating budget. Everything in wastewater and water is relatively expensive. I mean, if you were to replace a pump, it's like 14,000. It hits the tangible capital asset threshold the minute we kind of touch anything in operations. So adding a line item funded through sewer operations in the capital program affords staff and operations the ability to repair items or renew items that are not necessarily scheduled or that are reactionary, that provide the system redundancy that we were required in a sewer and a water operating. So you'll see the same thing in water. What we're projecting is there's a $50,000 threshold with this. It's not designated on any one year. This year I already probably have a particular project for that, but not its entirety. And so it would be a number that would carry forward. So if it's unused, it would just carry forward and not require new funding. But if it is used, then new funding to the 50,000 would be added until we get to a place where our renewal cycles and our redundancies requirements are lessened as a result of infrastructure upgrades within our community. It's just a good way to do it rather than trying to spend operational dollars to renew a pump that hits a tangible capital asset threshold and then has a whole lot of awkward conversation between Adam and I. So with that, that's sewer. I'll pass it to Mr. Davidson to talk about the remaining capital.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw. Through the CIO to Mayor and Council. So discussed a little bit in previous slides, South Courtney Sewer, we see 3 different line items. So phase 1B, gravity collection, force main, small lift station, proposed to start design in 27 and construct in 28. South Courtney Sewer Phase 1 should be 1A, proposed to do design in 26 and construct in 27. Not shown here in the table is the carry forward amount for design that would facilitate design in 26. And then Phase 2, similar to Phase 1B, design in 27, construct in 28. I would say 1B and 2 are heavily dependent on external factors, I would say. Carrying on those, Braidwood Road, we see the sewer component of that. Anderson Sanitary Lift Station, again, the carry forward is not included. We are planning to do design in 26 and construct in 27. And then Cousins Avenue, no change in budget, design 26, construct 27. That's it for sewer capital.
All right, starting with Council McCullough. Oh, actually, I think Adam had a comment as well.
I want to clarify an area on these capital slides that we'll be seeing. So the first column is what was originally put in the 26 year of the 25 financial plan. The next column is the change, the new request. If you see a negative in there, that means the project's been removed. And then you can either see it being added back in a future year or it is completely removed from the project. If you look at the first 2 lines, those projects that have no amount in the first column, those are brand new to the capital plan. There's just some background of how this design of the sheet works.
Thanks for that clarification. I'll pass it over to Council McCullough.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for that explanation. I also find that end column with funding really helpful too, just understanding how we're putting this capital plan together. Which I want to understand a little better how the South Sewer extension and the funding will work. You know, a large portion of this over time has developer contributions, DCC, and some sewer utility reserve. And debt. I can't remember if I said that or not. And I guess my question is, in terms of like the debt and our utility reserve, like these are basically costs to the existing system. So the utility reserve would be funded by the fees that are collected from users, and debt is paid for in the same way as far as I know. So in this case, with this specific project, because it is an expansion to new users, would those fees collected through connections be meant to fund those debts and replenish the operating fund, or is that just a straight up cost to the existing users on the system?
Thank you for the question. I can speak to some portions of that a little bit. These areas were annexed, I understand, by the city back in 2013. A great deal of effort by staff to unpack how that was done. Some interesting findings, to say the least. It looks like there were some promises made around connection fees that staff are still working to understand. Certainly might have missed some other opportunities around CICCs or DCCs that would facilitate these new entries to the system sort of buying their way in and paying for the rest of the system. So I would say staff are still working on some of those details. Regarding your the other parts of your question, I would refer that over to the CFO.
Okay, I think that did answer my question. So we were basically extending the sewer service to new connections, and the sewer service itself is the one that is having to fund this expansion. It's not being, there's no clear,
Mr. Garbutt's got a comment.
Sorry, go ahead.
no, you can answer.
Okay,
Go ahead.
sorry.
Cut me off.
So if I may, there was a similar conversation at the sewage commission, I understand, more recently. So we actually have to balance the costs providing that service. There were historical conversations, but now we also have the implementation of the small scale multi-unit development in there, so that each and every one of those properties typically are of sufficient size at a minimum to have their SHMU, and they potentially may be subdivided in that area. So we have to really reanalyze that at that point. And we also have to balance the land use implications in this semi-rural area, as well as environmental constraints. We have some waterfront areas that have archaeological issues, et cetera. So we have to give some really careful thought about those costs. Previous conversations about servicing costs, those areas, because they're not serviced by the sewer utility, have been accommodated inside the city, received our services and paid into them proportionally, but they paid nothing into the sewer at this point. So it's not really a straightforward answer, but we need to manage the costs, and we have to have it at a affordable rate to the sewer users. And that's balanced with the property owners there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would hope we're gonna get some kind of detailed report on this at some point, so maybe we don't need to wade into the details, but it would be good to understand how that sewer utility reserve is going to be replenished from these new connections, given that it's the existing users that have contributed toward that, and there is 1.1 million of reserves being used to fund this first phase of the project. Although that's, I guess, in 2027, so it looks like it's been pushed out for now, so maybe that'll be a conversation for further off into the future. But I think that's important for us to understand is how that's being funded. So just want to make that comment. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor McCollum and Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, maybe I'll just ask for some clarity on that. My understanding is that a lot of these properties in Courtney at the south end were somewhat promised, services as they were brought into the city, right? And I assume you understand that background. And then, so I guess the question is, are we going to have a discussion at council about how those costs are borne, or is it just like we're doing it and we'll figure that out later?
Yes, there will be through the mayor to all the council, there'll be a conversation about that. As I said, there are costs to provide services and there are benefits there. And the situation with very recent statutory changes, there's significant development potential in those areas.
Okay, thanks.
And yeah, I mean, it does seem like it's one of these legacy things that that's basically on the list of priorities to try to get sorted out. And I know when I first got on council, that was brought up 11 years ago, and I think Sandwick was also at the same time, and again, very similar promises made, et cetera. So. I think you can continue going.
Alright, thank you, thank you. Moving on from sewer into water. Again, very similar story as I articulated. I kind of already gave away the the farm on this one, not a lot of change in terms of water operating. The real change really is within the overall rate, which is on the next slide. Again, similar story here. The asset management reserve continues to rise as the water and sewer master plans come to fruition. We'll start to see the capital envelope really articulate those changes and those needs in terms of expenditures, and the self-funding model in terms of asset renewal will be based on the SIP recommendations that are already articulated within the fees and charges. So we're starting to see those come to fruition. Respectfully, between the two utilities, it's about 2.6 million in water per annum per year over the 100-year term for the SIP, and 2.9 million of an investment criteria. Those ebb and flowed based on project deployment. Obviously, scalability of one project over another, maybe more, but if you average that number over the 100 years, that's the number we need to maintain in good order our underground utility, and that's the number that the SIP will provide in perpetuity. So at the end of 2029 and 2030, the SIP program has fulfilled itself and it's at the sustainable number forward. So it differs that of the SIP in terms of general revenue, which takes 10 years to get to the threshold. The water and sewers were expedited over a 5-year period and they'll be done in 2030. So my point over is that 2030 we'll have the money in continuation to do the work. It'll be great. In terms of fees, the fees and charges continue to rise through the end of 2029, as you see within the bylaw, and the frontage has been adjusted through that same valuation to get to the financial thresholds that the SIP is projected. And post that, we'll be in a very good place. This doesn't obviously include any changes in indirect costs that we would receive from the CVRD in terms of water treatment or wastewater treatment. As those costs rise, we'll have to have a conversation as to where it sits within our financial model for both water and sewer. And we anticipate the CVRD to be finalizing their water master plan this year, as well as the long-term financial plan for the wastewater treatment plant as well. We hope that those to come to fruition in 2026, which will articulate some very clear financial shifts for them that we can then build into our financial portfolio as we go forward. Water capital, a big one for me in operations is ICI, or Institutional, Commercial and Industrial Meter Program. You'll see in 2026 and in 2027, $500,000 in each. That is the number value that is required to finish the ICI program and complete all meter installs for that particular group. So then we can really focus on the residential class. So knowing that value, I've put that into the budget right now. That means from an ICI perspective, we have 236 meters out of the 665 that still need to be completed. And from a multifamily perspective, there's about 37 that still need to be completed. And that will fund that. As I articulated earlier, you'll see the same $50,000 line item in water for capital expenditures for minor capital repairs. And again, it's a funded line item that will be utilized if required, when required, to maintain continuity in our systems and our delivery of potable water to our residents. Again, if unfunded, those funds will be carried forward for the year after to keep us in good standing with our friends in finance. Chris, do you want me to touch on the PRV connection or the Water Smart initiatives?
Yeah, you can do this one.
Perfect. PRV connection is 2026 design. So we're hoping that the 87 connection for PRV is a direct correlation to the South Courtney water system with the CVRD. So as the transmission system goes in through Courtney from Lake Trail to service KFN in 2026, and that's the plan. We hope to do a fire flow connection off that, and that's already been predetermined through the design that we have an ability to connect on Cumberland Road. So to be completing the design and then the physical works in 2027 to provide that connection and that redundancy from the new 140 HGL system off the treatment plant into the 87 zone and provide secondary fire suppression for the Cumberland zone area in around that particular area. There's two connections, that connection and then an additional connection that will occur. That's not a fire flow connection, that's a direct connection for the Ridge development. which will provide the ultimate build-out secondary connection for the Ridge development. Currently, right now, it's serviced by the booster station. The booster station then will return into a redundant station to provide fire suppression. So we'll have two sources of flow for that area, which is very much required as we continue to grow in that way. And then the Water Smart initiatives, district zone metering, the 75K that was otherwise allocated for that has been removed from the budget. Staff's conversation with the CBRD about Water Smart initiatives, specifically around district zone metering, will now be addressed at a regional level. And so that will be articulated within their master plan to create source separation and differentiation between transmission and distribution. And they'll be taking on those work in collaboration with the city, but they'll be funding it through their plan. With that, I'll push it over to Director Davidson.
Thank you, Director Shaw. Similar comments to sewer capital. We see Braidwood Road and Cousins Avenue. These represent the water components of those capital projects. Thank you.
And then I think next slide is questions. So maybe one of the questions I'll ask, like, and I know we have the Water Smart stuff that we're working on, and some stuff's going to be coming back to us as well. But when we're looking at this expansion, you talked about those area meters that are going to kind of give that bigger sense. But and so far we've already been putting in the boxes. When we're going down south, is there a thought that this might be an area to start with water meters right away, or are we still going to hold off?
It's a very good question. It's a conversation that I hope to have very intimately with council in the new year with respect to the water metering program or the universal water metering program, about what infrastructure currently exists in terms of being meter ready, what district zone metering opportunities exist in the larger format in terms of leak loss reduction and accountability between distribution and transmission. So there's another conversation. And then in terms of designated areas like the Ridge development as an example of an area that is completely new greenfield and is completely meter ready. So if there's a conversation of, can it be metered immediately through the process, as long as we've established appropriate bylaws and equitable service rates that can achieve our overall goal of reduction and conservation while being accountable and amendable to transparency of cost with respect to funding the utility. So lots of conversations to be happening. I'm currently working with Chris Payne on the financial modeling with respect to that. So that's the last piece that goes into the universal water meter and business case study to understand what a short-term, medium-term, and long-term implementation plan could look like, and then options that exist within bylaws for council. Specifically around conversations on net new greenfield development will all be, and the answer to that could be metered versus meter ready.
Right. Okay. Thanks for that answer. And I'll pass it over to Councillor Moore.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I'm definitely, as you know, very excited and chomping at the bit around the water meter conversation. Interestingly, we know that some of the highest use areas are areas that are ready to go. So I think that would be great to look at, looking at those folks that already have it in place, and they're also consuming the most water. So hoping to have that conversation.
I do not see any other lights at this moment in time, and we're at 5:30. We did start at 3. Often we go till 6. It's been recommended maybe we have a dinner break. I'm not sure. Are we? So if everybody's good, we'll come back at approximately 10 to 6.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, we're going to continue on with our budget meeting, and I will pass it over to Mr. Legemeyer.
Oh, hello, nice to be here once again. It is. It was, God. We are on the home stretch here. Getting to the summary of the capital plan. So far, we've seen each director present on their individual projects, but I find it's hard, you know, what does that all mean when you pull it all together? So when you look at the slide here, we have the actual consolidated capital plan, and over the 5 years, we're looking to spend $181 million. The bottom row there identifies any new projects to the capital plan that were not included in the 25 financial plan. So over that period, it is additional $24 million worth of projects. Getting into the specific areas, I'm not going to speak to every single project. So if we see one on the list, we can ask a specific question about it, but we should have seen each one of these through each director's presentations.
It doesn't look like there's any questions.
And so I do want to speak to the impact of the proposed capital projects. So overall, the total tax implication in 2026 of new capital projects is $1.6 million. A number of these projects have funding coming from other areas. LGCAP was a main portion, or some relevant reserves. If the project was very much renewal, it would be funded from SIP when possible. I do want to identify that in 2027 and 28 and 2030, there is additional debt identified. 27 is a 6th Street multimodal corridor enhancement program. That's one under transportation, and there's a bit of a holding pattern in anticipation of the grant program opening back up. So there's a possibility this project might not come to fruition because provincial and federal funding programs might not be there. The 2028 is $2 million for charging infrastructure. The LGCAP funds, the available tax revenue was just not reasonable to fund this project all from current year taxation. There's no suitable reserve. As identified, there could be, should be, hopefully are grants for this project, but those will be determined at that time. To put the project in the capital plan, I have to fund it somehow. It's not reasonable to put a project in without a funding source. And then again, in 2030, there's another fairly significant charging infrastructure project. That bottom row shows the estimated tax impact each year of the proposed capital projects. An item that I wanted to bring up was staff does a lot of work to present a capital plan and a financial plan that is palatable by council, that is achievable, sometimes at a stretch. So there's a lot of projects that don't even get to see the light of day. And some of the ones that were brought forward this year, I was like, these are important, and council should be aware of the work that isn't included in the capital plan. So three of the projects are related to ongoing renewal and replacement of existing assets. The road surface reactive repair did not make it in. So we have $1.4 million of paving funding already in the plan. This would be really nice to have more reactionary type funding for road surfaces, but it just didn't make the cut that way. The one I really want to highlight, though, is our storm water master plan projects. Council adopted there's a good acronym and name for the stormwater management plan that our integrated rainwater master plan.
Oh, yeah.
Which identified a significant amount of projects. Historically, there has not been a specified funding source for storm projects. And when this plan came forward, the overall cost and impact, it didn't sit with me to be able to just fund through taxation. So I'd really like to return to council with a funding model, almost like not a utility, but some sort of ongoing base funding for the storm projects. A lot of these projects are also included in the upcoming DCC bylaw. So it kind of goes hand in hand. Once we have an adopted DCC bylaw that provides a substantial portion of funding for these projects, bringing it with some sort of method to fund the city's portion of that, I want to have that as a better conversation. So given the overall value, like we're looking at about a $13 million storm project listing over the next 5 years that just is not in the financial plan at this point. Moving on to how the capital plan is funded, a big portion is coming from debt. I want to highlight those first 3 projects are essentially carried forward projects. Their projects are on the go and we have debt authorized, but it might not have been acted on. And part of it was just timing of how the project was coming together. I do want to highlight there on this list, we still have McPhee Meadows Phase 2. And with the recent council direction, that one will be coming off. And I do want to clarify, I think I answered the question wrong with regards to when debt payments come due. And I think the question was specifically on the fire hall. So the $18 million, we'll see our first interest payment. Oh, where did I write my note?
As you had said, it's going to be basically.
Yeah, we identified an interest payment in the year the debt is listed. So in 26, we have half an interest payment. And in 27, we have our first principal payment and our first year of interest payable. So the year you see the debt being taken on, you'll have 50% of the interest payment. The following year is when the actual full repayment starts. That's how debt is built into the financial plan. And so going through, we can see that in 26, we don't have a substantial change in debt servicing costs, but it's really that 27 year when we have the interest and principal hitting for the fire hall. And then it continues with the big projects flowing through to 2030 of in the general fund about $5.1 million of debt servicing costs. To put that into perspective, we currently spend $1.8 million in debt servicing costs. With regards to the water and sewer fund, there is no new debt planned for the water fund. In the sewer fund, there is debt for the Anderton lift station and phases of the South Courtney sewer project. And so bringing the whole entire funding together, like there's a lot of numbers floating around. The total new debt identified across the 5-year plan is $96 million worth of borrowing, 78 million in general and 18 million in sewer. You know, the expected debt servicing costs on that at 4% at 25 years, as some of the loans are going to be over a 30-year period, some will be at 20, is expected to be $6.3 million annually. How does that, are we able to fund that? Well, that last few bullets there identifies that the city's debt servicing limit is $16.4 million per year we can spend on principal and interest. So if we take our existing debt, the new debt for the entire 5-year plan, we get to an annual spend of 8.1 million, which we're just at the 50% mark for our allowable debt servicing. So although it is a substantial amount of debt we're taking on, we're also still within reasonable regulated amounts. And with that, it concludes questions on the capital plan.
You talked about being within the plan, and what would be kind of nice, I think, just visually, is that chart that sort of says, like, what debt is falling off, so we can kind of see. And I'm sure I've seen that in the past where it's like, here's where our debt is, it's going to go up, but then things will drop off if we look at that, like you said, 25, 30-year forecast, and then really what would be useful is maybe even a bullet list of what are the projects that we're delaying or might crop up sometime in the near future, just so that we're aware how close we're getting to our debt ceiling. But I see Councillor Frisch may have a question or comment.
Oh yeah, I was just curious about like what that costs an average house to service $6 million a year. That's something that you've thought about?
That is a great question that I don't have an answer for right now.
Okay. I'm sure we could figure it out though.
I don't see any other questions or comments at this point, so, all right, thanks very much. We'll continue on.
Moving right along to the special projects. So this is an area where it is a substantial project that has identical start and finish and a goal, but does not result in a capital asset. So we break them apart and identify them individually. And it really helps, like, instead of having these projects dump into your operations and just make your year-to-year comparison very hard to see. And it's really easy to identify the specific things we're working on. Like we did with capital, each director's already talked through each of these projects. And in the appendixes to the report, there's a good listing and description of each of the special projects. I want to identify that, you know, $2.7 million of the special projects are funded from surplus, and just under $1 million are funded from specific reserves or other contributors. So the special projects for 26, total of $3.6 million. There's a listing of them. They cover a variety of items. And I don't actually have a question slide here, as the next two slides are really much the summary of where the financial plan is and our next steps.
So any questions on any of these slides? Councillor Moore.
I thought the anti-racism was being pushed forward, so just not sure why it's showing up there for 2026.
Ms. O'Connell.
So anti-racism is funded through as a special project under surplus. The $50,000 is really just the placeholder, and it just continues to carry forward. So there's no additional tax implications, and as soon as the project gets started, we'll start drawing down.
So are there any other things on this list that are similar to that then? Because I mean, it makes it look like this is all budgeted for 2026, but
Not from the corporate services department, but I did mention from the development services department, you may have some changes, but that'll come in a future report, and I can't speak to the others.
And that $50,000 going forward, then does it act as a surplus if it's not spent, or just stays in surplus? Okay.
it might be good to just find a way to highlight that, just so that it doesn't look like it's, you know, being spent this year. Thanks.
All right. I don't see any other questions or comments, so let's continue on.
So my wonderful summary slide. The financial plan is presented, maintains and enhances service levels with a $43 million capital plan in 2026 and 181 over 5 years. It's a pretty substantial plan. And you look at some of those projects listed, they will be transformative. You know, identify $3.7 million in strategic special projects. Those are the ones you can point to and like, this is something we want to get done. And all this comes at a somewhat reasonable property tax change, you know, given the scenarios presented. So this is the final slide. Is what we're really looking for council to give direction on the property tax change scenario, endorse the operating plan as presented, endorse the capital plan as presented, and endorse the financial plan as a whole. And what I'm really looking forward is direction to staff to prepare the actual financial plan bylaw for council's consideration into the new year.
Excellent. And one of the things that we had chatted about yesterday, I think Councillor Frisch brought forward a motion about having a chart with 4% and 5% scenarios. Is that what you were going to talk?
You know, you stayed up late last night.
Or got up early? Mr. Garwood.
Thanks, through the mayor to council. There were a couple of key discussions. The amount of surplus conversation based on the parameters. I could just simplify it now that I understand it, you know, exclusive of our reserves. So how much do we have that's a percentage of surplus minus our reserve amounts, as well as the potential on those scenarios. So I'll turn that back over to just reminding council of what we talked about yesterday. Also, I guess it's incumbent upon me to, council was concerned about how much our budget itself. We have some options as it relates to capital, but I'm just offering that unless council doesn't have any questions in that regard. And so then it would be, if it is as simple as the conversation about the tax rate and surplus utilization, then I would be turning that over to my colleague, Mr. Langmar.
Judging from the conversation yesterday, one of the pieces that would really help me to build the scenarios is we have a couple items that we know that are moving within the financial plan being deferred, projects that have been pulled out that aren't represented yet. Is landing on where council is comfortable with the surplus level, you know, that 20% or the 2 months of which amount. So if we can peg a dollar value, there was a brief calculation about $8.8 million would be a comfortable amount. And then I can recalculate those tax change scenarios and bring them back to council in the new year. And that would really give that chance to see the intricate changes that occurred.
All right. Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, you'll be coming back with the change with the, well, now I'm trying to remember if we talked about, you have 3.7 million strategic special projects on 2 slides before, and near the end it says public works building options analysis. Is there any change to that?
That one's being deferred to 27.
Right. That's what I recall. Sorry. Yeah, no, we went into it last night. I didn't remember how we talked about it. Yeah, I guess my question is, you know, or my thought was around the 8.8 million and surplus being a reasonable amount. That number was sort of proposed based on looking at our overall budget minus things that already have reserves. And so it would be interesting to see if we could sort of have some sort of policy around that, so that going forward, obviously it's not always going to be 8.8 million, right? So and then yeah, it would be nice to see what sort of options come out of that number, but also somewhere between where we are in that number. So you already have a few scenarios that goes down to, I think you said 6%. So yeah, I don't know what the numbers, what the percentages look like if you brought it right down to 8.8. I'd be interested in leaving some surpluses for future years above that 8.8 number, but I'd also like to see the scenarios. So when might that happen? When might that come to council? Or I guess you want us to give you a number. That's the problem. Is
Yeah,
you know,
Yeah, Mr. Harwood.
Yeah, through the mayor to council. So if Ms. Langmar, if you can go to the slide that actually shows, you know, conceptually, right? We had a slide that had the different tax rates, utilization of different surplus amounts. I think I want to make sure we're very focused here, because we're well in advance of every other financial plan we've done before. So I don't want council to have to go around in a whole series of circles. Our overall tax change scenarios with a percentage of utilization of surplus, if we can make some assumptions, I think if the council had discussed the concept of the surplus equals our costs minus
There it is.
There it is right there. Our costs minus our reserves, with that conversation of the kind of around that 8.8 and 9 million conversation with the pardon me, you know, we can extrapolate from this existing table. I think if everyone accepts that concept of what the surplus available estimation is, and those percent tax change scenarios, and on the screen we have the very top what we need for money. Then we have ranging from 9, 8, 7, 6, and then Councillor Frisch had mentioned 5 and 4. So is that, sorry, I'm translating for our finance officer, but I'd appreciate some information through the finance officer to council about what was discussed yesterday in that, so we can turn it around and council is sort of comfortable about where at least they're going to hear information back.
Right. Thanks for that clarification, and I'll pass it to Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mayor. I think the discussion we had about the surplus was really productive. There's two things that I thought were really useful that came out of it. One was the idea of Councillor McCollum brought up, of looking at areas which already have healthy reserves and therefore not needing to have a surplus as well to backstop them. And the other one is that we haven't got a reserve policy in place, but having done a fair amount of research looking at other communities' policies, they seem to be in the 5 to 10% range, and I could see combining those two and using the surplus amount being under consideration would be net of the areas that have reserves, and that if we're looking at the 5 to 10% range, which is common among local governments that have developed policy, even going with the high end of that. So, sort of like somewhere in the 5 to 10% range, but keep it at 10% sort of initially, certainly. And I have a bit of a different view than Councillor Frisch. I think the idea of using sort of like large quantities of the reserve, like right off the bat, to get things down to a very low number, there, I would prefer to see it looking over the 5-year plan and trying to smooth it wherever possible, so you don't get the year after next huge bump that we're seeing presented in 2027. I think if we were to put large amounts of our surplus into this year, then we would probably find ourselves faced with something like that. Maybe not quite as extreme because there's no surpluses put into those figures, and with the resources to be able to manage that at all. So I'd prefer to see the if we sort of target the amount that I was just speaking of for surplus, look at the available funds that arise from that, and work to smooth out the 5-year plan, so there is not this considerable spike in the middle of it. And I mean, 4 and 5 are ambitious. I think I'd be entirely happy with 6, depending on what the numbers that follow it would be. If it's 6, and then is that what, 27%, or I can't.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, so not 27%. And I think the objective of that, like, larger amount of surplus would be used strategically with a multi-year plan to, sort of keep tax increases low but fairly constant and consistent through the 5-year plan. Just some thoughts off the top.
Thanks very much, Councillor Cole Hamilton and Councillor McCollum.
Thanks, Mayor. In terms of when this comes back, I guess I'm assuming that we'll have the McPhee Meadows borrowing out. I mean, I realize that we made a decision on that very recently, but I just want to confirm that there are kind of some big ticket items that land either this year or next year that have some refinement that I think that we should have a better handle on in the new year. So I just want to confirm that the McPhee Meadows, I think Chris actually covered it, that it will be adjusted. And then also, I know there was explanation that we've left the fire hall higher for now, but if we have a refinement of costs, I would assume that we wouldn't need like such a wide margin to be comfortable in terms of how we proceed. So I just want to make sure that I'm interpreting that correctly, that if we find out the fire hall is going to be $5 million less, that there would be at least some type of amendment in the financial plan to reflect that before we go to adoption.
I would say yes, that is reasonable.
Okay. And then so I guess I mean I've talked about this a lot already, but I think somewhere around $8 million surplus is in line with what you suggested. One concern that I do have, though, just around the surplus is our certainty around numbers. I was looking back, when we did this exercise last year, and, we do spend a lot of time on how much surplus we can use, but it's also the surplus tells us how much we tax too much the year before. So it's a really important number to understand. And we never really know that number very clearly when we're when we're deciding on the tax requisition. And so like just to reflect back on the last time, the projection that we had for where things were going to land for 2024 was around 14 million. But then when the financial statements came out in May, it's 20. So that's like quite a significant difference. And I'm just wondering if we can maybe talk a little bit about why there would be such a difference, and then how much comfort you have around the numbers that we're, you know, considering right now, and how much change there could be between, you know, this conversation and when we, you know, go through the audit process and get a final number in 6 months from now.
I'll back up.
Next one.
This is the one I want to speak to. So there's the surplus at the end of 2024, $20,186,000. There's a number of items in there that we don't carve out specifically. So any capital projects funded from taxation that aren't completed in 24, we carry forward that amount. So that $1.7 million is sitting in surplus, but it's already been allocated to the capital projects. You know, council identified another $1 million of spending on the 6th Street Bridge that appears on the financial statement that it's, you know, part of your $20 million surplus. But when you start taking apart these known pieces, you're really actually looking at only 14 million. And so that's one of the pieces to understand, is that there's complexity and interconnectivities, but it is a good question of like, how certain are we on that surplus number change? And that's one that is challenging to estimate as I'm preparing information in October, is there's 2-3 months of spending. And at times you're finishing off that summer construction period, and a lot of projects are coming in, and a lot of things are completing. So I try to be conservative, but also fair. And so it's an identification, and that's why pegging a percentage or a range is a good method. And then we can work towards that, and we can, you know, focus that once we bring the financial plan back for the final adoption.
Yeah, and I guess that's, I mean, a good point to end on is that, like, we're being very specific here, but it really is, it's an estimate, and therefore, you know, whatever we're discussing should really land in some kind of range that's, yeah, on the conservative side, although I'm sure you don't tend to, I mean, I would hope you're erring on the side of caution, not the other way around. I'm sure that's the case. Thanks.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that, you know, as we get a much clearer reserve policy, but again, if projects are being pushed and so they're getting carried forward, there's also the cost escalation that goes along with them. So it's like, yeah, trying to balance, you're sort of juggling while you're on a surfboard on top of a, you know, ball of some sort. So I'll pass it over to Councillor Fish.
Thanks again. I'm just looking at the taxation chart, taxation change scenarios on page 19. And is it safe to assume that if we wanted to bring it down to 5%, that we'd be using an additional surplus of like 3.7 million? Is that kind of like, seems like $400,000 kind of gets us 1%.
That is correct.
Yeah. And that would bring us down to, you know, around that $8 million range. Is that right?
That is correct.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm not necessarily sold on any numbers, but I would love to have it come back with, you know, those kind of options. I don't know where the rest of the council's at, but I'm definitely thinking if not 5, then 6. And I'm not really keen on going much higher, but I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
I do want to bring attention to is the 2027 year tax change. You know, if you're down to that 6% range, it is requiring a 20% tax change next year.
Yep, subsequent.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that puts council in a pickle next year, because a lot of the projects will have been somehow started with momentum and then be very expensive to continue on with any surpluses to help soften that. But at the same time, I think it might be the pressure needed to to really figure out what has to be done in those future years. Yeah, I'm happy to hear from other councillors about how they feel.
Thanks, Councillor Frisch and Councillor Moore.
Thanks, Mayor. I mean, I think the request is that we, on the recommendation is that we provide direction, but then also endorse. And I feel that we can't endorse anything until we have a bunch of these questions answered. So what I'm hearing is that we have projects that are being contemplated being taken off. There's also some revisions that have already been made in departments as well. So what we've been presented is not completely, I don't want to say reliable, but it's, there's been some shifts and revisions and some contemplated or proposed revisions as well. I also, I do think that we're holding too much surplus because I think people look at, they see us the last couple of years at least taking money out of surplus to lower their taxes, and they're probably thinking like, why didn't you just keep my taxes lower, not have so much surplus? Like, I think it doesn't optically, it's not a good situation, I don't think. I also agree with Councillor Cole Hamilton around the consistency across. I would like to see something worked out where the tax increases are more consistent over the 4 years rather than these big spikes. And I think we can still achieve that by using more surplus. Like, I hear what you're saying. I mean, maybe we're not going to go down to 4 or 5 because then next year will be so much higher. But I think if we're not keeping as much surplus and we're also taking some things off or pushing them forward to see what the next council wants to do, that will help level those out even with the capital projects. So those are the things that I think we need to consider before we can kind of move forward on this. And I don't know how that would look for a recommendation, but I'll leave it at that for now. Thanks.
And maybe I'll just make a comment going back to that the scenario slide where it talks about those different tax scenarios, and this is possibly a bit of a contrary comment. It's not really about going in this direction, but I believe in future years it says what a zero usage of surplus would do for taxes, and it might be useful to have that as the baseline of like if we weren't using surpluses, because this one it says we're starting at 12, but that's using about $1 million in surplus. So what would it be if it also was zero? Just so we know what that baseline is before we start utilizing surpluses. But I would definitely say that if there's a way to utilize surpluses to smooth things out, again, I think that just makes it easier for planning and stuff, and just and I get that. I mean, I can look at this and see we're looking at I'm not going to say the exact numbers, but very similar numbers than we were last year. Like that bow wave just keeps getting pushed and pushed and pushed, and it's a tough one when we keep the taxes low in the current year, and then the next year we sort of pay the piper, so to speak. So, but if there is a way to utilize those surpluses to really smooth that out, then I think that would be much appreciated by everybody, regardless of where we end up in next year's tax rate. Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, so 2 points, I guess, just to comment again on the high increase in 2027. I kind of mentioned it already, but there are a lot of projects that we've pushed off to 2027, and it may just be the case that the next council has to have a harder look at that list, and that doesn't bother me. And the other point was around, just the actual amount of dollars and cents that we're looking at changing for the average homeowner's tax bill. I think I mentioned it in day one. It was something like $120 between 12% and 6%. That sound about right?
Through the mayor, that I believe it's slide 27. There it is.
Great. Yeah, there it is. And so also just to keep some perspective, you know, a lot of our increases are in utilities and we're not talking about lowering any of those. So we really are talking about saving the average home $120. Which, I mean, it's not nothing and it's, you know, death by 1,000 cuts and all the rest, but yeah. Thanks.
Councilor McCollum.
Yeah, I just feel like maybe I should chime in one last time. Yeah, I mean, yeah, broken down per home, you could say it's, you know, a little or a lot, but the thing is taxes are cumulative on top one year after another, so, you know, it all impacts, and it's true at the same time that, you know, if we push off increase now, there's likely a bigger one right around the corner. But one thing I would also highlight, I know that we've talked about it at the council table for quite some time, is the fire hall has been, you know, coming down the pipe, and it's a major expense that didn't have a reserve that was being built up over a long period of time, despite the fact that that project was on the capital plan long before I was on council. So, you know, as a community and as a council and as an organization, we've known that landing as a real asset in service is going to have a measurable increase on taxation that we can point to. And that time that truly lands is next year. And that is just, that's the way it is. Like, we can't take that impact away. It's a massive new amount of borrowing. And, you know, so it's going to land next year. And, you know, I just don't know if there's a huge argument to increasing taxes now to take away that next year. It's very easy to explain to people. It's like, yeah, there's an increase this year as the borrowing comes on for that new fire hall that we can all see, and was, you know, needed and well supported in the community. So yeah, maybe some things will have to be pushed out, but the truth of the matter is, like, this is the exact same thing that's going to happen should the memorial pool get replaced. It's going to be another jump up in borrowing, and you're going to see you know, tax increase that's out of line with other years. So I just wanted to add that that consideration, that just because there's an increase on the horizon doesn't mean that, you know, we can't do that.
Councilor Cole Hamilton.
I'd agree with Councillor McCollum, but I suppose we were still looking at the same kind of last year's 5-year plan looked much like this one, where 2 years out there was going to be a large increase, and at that point we didn't have the fire hall in the budget. So I do think it's important to look at, if we're going to change our policy, or our unofficial at this point policy on surplus, that's a singular opportunity. It will happen once, and I think would be wise not to put everything into a single year, the current year, and leave the next council with few tools or options, and quite a steep increase that they're trying to navigate their way through. As I've said, like, I think we can reduce the amount of surplus we hold at for 8.8 million. I would say, based upon sort of the figures I've seen, what many communities do, of 5 to 10%, that something more like 6 to 7 might be adequate. That would be more than 10% of the net surplus. But I'd like to see it applied to produce a 5-year chart which smooths out as much as possible the bow wave that we're all agreed is there. Something which doesn't sort of start or go 6 and then 20 and then by the end go down to 3. If we can find a way to use that singular surplus as we adjust it to get us through that bow wave with reasonable, moderate, fairly similar increases throughout the entire length of the budget. So, like, anyway, I do think that's an important consideration. I know it's not everyone's view, but I think it's certainly, I feel that quite strongly.
Thanks, Councillor Cole Hamilton and Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, I guess I kind of agree and disagree because if we lower taxes, they're cumulative. So we may not actually have a surplus that can deliver what is wanted there unless we want to pick a higher number like 8 or 9%. I mean, I haven't done the math on it, but if we're, yeah, I do think that there is value in not using the entire amount that we've identified to reduce taxes in this year. And that's not necessarily what I'm suggesting, that we take it and use it all. Like I mean, when I was talking about this earlier, I suggested that we should maybe use it to also smooth out that borrowing that's coming online, but it will then carry that increase forward into the following year. So, I mean, you can make an argument for both of it or either of it. It's really up to the next council if we want to put a little bit more into surplus to have it there for future councils to decide how to use it for taxation. But it gets decided each and every year, so we can build it into the financial plan one way or the other. But the truth is that unspent surplus is the purview of the council of the day. And if the next council wants to use it to smooth out a tax in the first year of their council, they can, and they could actually just take the hit in year one and have less increases in the rest of the, you know, their term. So, I mean, this is something that we chew on each time, but I think this is part of the problem of not having a policy in place, is that, you know, we're not quite sure where to land on how much surplus is available for reducing now or reducing later.
Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, I also have a hard time seeing how we could smooth out, you know, the bow wave and future tax increases by using more, by spreading out the surplus, because it just means that eventually you're going to have to tax in that amount to get back up to the new baseline of spending. I think the only way to get rid of it really is to cut capital projects or I guess operations, but I'm tempted to push forward and propose something for staff to go back with. Does that seem reasonable at this point?
Yeah, I mean, this is the discussion right now. I mean, you know, I mean, there's capital projects, there's also level of service.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's and when we talk about capital projects, generally speaking, they're one-time costs, or they may be spread out over the cost of them. It's level of service that, you know, is there every year.
Yeah, and I don't know if I want to have a level of service talk this year. And I'm inclined to, I see a lot of things have been sort of trimmed down for this budget, so I really appreciate that. So I feel like that's getting done, and then it's maybe another conversation for next year. And on the capital project side, we pushed a lot of things off. So in essence, we are trimming those things, and then they'll have to be decided on next year. So I'll let Councillor Cole Hamilton speak.
Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks very much. I am, I guess as I've said, I'm of the opinion that we should at least try to see if there is a plan that can be presented, rather than assuming that it's not possible, to reduce the bow wave by using the singular adjustment in surplus and allocating it carefully across the 5 years of the plan. I would, I mean, if other people are thinking that 8.8 is a good amount to retain in the surplus, 8.8, I believe, was at 20% based upon all of the expenditures which don't have an existing reserve. Again, as I said, having looked at other communities' policies, which are in the 5 to 10% range rather than 20%, I would be comfortable asking if we could also model it using a $6 million accumulated surplus target, which would still be more. I think that's around 12 to 13%. So still higher than other communities while we develop this plan. But and then take that surplus and see if it can be done to smooth out the levels of increases anticipated rather than just putting, as I think Councillor Frisch and I just have a difference in philosophy, which is entirely reasonable, but I think they're very different approaches to the whole thing. And maybe we're not best to produce only one type of plan, what your type of plan or my type of plan. Perhaps we could there could be a second clause which says just models the same thing, but with a $6 million surplus, and the idea of not just reducing 2027, but producing a smoothed out 5-year plan, which starts with the first year at 6%. So it'd be a very specific recommendation to explore that. But I would just like to see what could be done rather than only trying to solve the problem one way. So I don't know, staff, if that if direction along those lines would make sense to you. That I'm not sure who drafted this, but this is, I think it's a fair summation of much of the discussion, but my particular suggestion would be somewhat different. So nothing's on the table yet, but I would. Okay. Councillor McCollum has a suggestion on maybe how to square this circle, so I'll cede the floor.
Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, I guess I'm moving along that idea. And you've suggested a comfort in going as low as 6 million in that timeline. So maybe maybe what we could get is a model of you know, a 4-year plan where the lowest point would be like a $6 million unspent surplus, but not necessarily stay there. Like maybe that could absorb some of these expenses. I don't know if I'm explaining myself very well, but if we're going to use it over a 3-year period, it could actually go down as low as 6, but return to 8 by the end of 4 years or something. And yeah, I would leave that up to Adam to try and parse out.
Mr. Garbutt?
Yeah, thanks. Is it okay, Councillor Frisch? I just wanted to offer some thoughts. So the approach to smooth over a 5-year period, it actually makes some assumptions. So we have services that we offer and the capital goes up and down. So if council is comfortable that the budget this is our service delivery, it's that profile, and then by capital, because that can't change. We can't spread out surplus across that time. Just to point that out, is that the actual budget is the combined budget. And some of you may be seeing in your other life with your other hat at the RD that every single service has a 5-year financial plan. They must tax to deliver that service. In fact, they tax a little bit more so they can smooth that out over that 5-year. It's a very because it's in buckets. It's very defined service levels with service projects. But if you stacked it all up together, every single one of those, you might see something sort of similar to this, because each participant, I'm just illustrating that a little bit. So so I acknowledge that. So I think if council, it's just like 3 years ago when they're having a lot of conversation about estimating the surplus, and there was some worry that it might not be accurate. I think if we're aware that we're doing our best to understand our service levels, and then those individual capital projects which we've already determined, and then if we're going to project to the community that this is what we want to do in the 5-year plan, we need to be extremely rigorous both on service levels in that period as well as those capitals, because and this council is aware we've had lots of things come up during their term that we want to react to. Today I heard about we have a cycling network plan implementation plan, and we had conversations about protection inside some of those things. So we have to acknowledge that there are costs that might be there. So I think what we're trying to do is develop an approach, and if we're comfortable that it's the service level is kind of for that period stays where it is, and the capital is prescribed based on council's capital plan, and then we're really rigorous that that capital plan won't change. You know, again, to the best of our ability, I think that maybe I'm hearing from council that it's seeing it's like quite variable, but some of that is projectable. And then the third slight challenge, and again, when you project surplus forward, which does happen, like I said, in those services, again, you have to make those assumptions, and we look at what we usually have as surplus. So again, there's a lot of assumptions that have to be made, because when the actuals come back, they're there. So I'm just describing what that could potentially look like. Because that's, I will say that's not how this municipality and some other municipalities like generally do it. But I think council's been wanting to have that certainty. So I just offer that. And then to also remember that if we want to have that level, we need to be incredibly rigorous on saying no and not adding anything in there. If that's to set that expectation, because it is a lot of it's appropriate and good work that our finance group would need to do between now and when the budget comes back again, but we just have to be clear about some of those things if we want to do a very accurate thing. And this is the last term, this is the last financial plan for this council, and so that is setting that sort of expectation going forward. So I just want to share that. And then, but I can't say, you know, for our financial staff what they can project like that.
Yeah, and I think going back to, I think, you know, Council McCollum talked about the even a reserve policy, which we started to talk about in 2019, and then COVID came along and was like, you know, so much for your plans, and you know, but here we are years later, reeling a bit without having those things in place for some of these larger projects that we have coming in front of us. Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks. I don't think I'm that far off of the idea you propose about saving some surplus for future years. And I was gonna come back and suggest we just amend this suggested motion here to include, you know, 5, 6, 7% for argument's sake, and get it down to a, you know, a narrower band for us to consider when it comes back. But beyond that, I just want to reiterate my belief, and maybe staff can correct me if I'm wrong. The more surpluses we use this year, we still need the same tax revenue next year unless we cut projects or service levels, right? So unless we cut capital projects, yeah, and we can use, you know, the other half of our surplus next year, we can bring it right down again, but then 2028, you're going to need another $4 million in revenue. So we're just pushing the bow wave out, and it's going to be, if we did that for 4 years, used up all our surplus, it would be a massive increase 5 years down the road. So I don't know that idea of relying on surplus to lower the number every year is going to work. It's just, we're willing to do it right now to soften it this year. But yeah, I don't know how council feels about just simplifying this and moving forward with something coming back at 5, 6, and 7% for tax increases. Or maybe we want to discuss cutting some capital projects, but I'm happy with where they're at for this year.
Councillor Colin Hamilton.
I'd be agreeable to make it just 5, 6, and 7, just to simplify things. And I would suggest also having either 8.8, which is as an accumulated surplus, or 6, model those 3%, like 5, 6, 7, at with a $6 million retained surplus by like as the lowest point at any point during the 5-year plan, and 8.8 as the lowest point at any point in the 5-year plan. That's my motion. Yeah.
Okay, and we'll just wait till the letters show up on the screen, and
Can we put minimum surplus balance target?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks.
so a minimum surplus target.
And also, I would just say that I think wanting to be a bit more specific than just reduce future tax change, to smooth out over the course of the 5-year plan, tax increases. And, the Councillor, like, I'm not an expert, and I don't think Councillor Frisch is either. I think it might be possible. I'd like to see. He thinks it probably isn't possible, but that's why it's worth modeling in 2 different ways, and then we'll see how it goes. So, yeah, that's I think that's the resolution I'd like to put forward. And Councillor Martins, that's ever so slightly tweaked. Does that still meet with your second? Great.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, just a question for staff. I mean, to get down to 5%, we wouldn't need to go to 6 million as a minimum or a minimum surplus, would we?
I'd have to say, I haven't been able to do the calculation in my head yet.
Sure.
One piece I would say though is in those lower 5, 6, 7s, it does make adjustments and smoothing in the future years more challenging as the surplus gets consumed right away. So in my modeling, I might see that even at 7%, you're still pushing a pretty big amount next year. What I will do in the background is see what it looks like further out, and I may return with slightly different, but still include this, because these 5, 6, 7s might not achieve what council is truthfully looking for over the long term.
Yeah, and that's what I guess I'm getting at is if you're gonna have to take this chart that you gave us called taxation change scenarios and put in additional surplus utilized in future years, as in 27 to show. And I think we'll see by 2028, we'll run out at 6%, probably run out next year, but yeah, looking forward to seeing those numbers.
Yeah, because on that taxation scenario, the top one was relatively smooth, 12, 13, and 9 over the next few years, but then drops down. Mr. Garvey.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it's incumbent on me in my role to let council know, to have these kinds of targets, it will have long-term service impacts, that there will have to be choices, because we actually have to tax, we need to bring in enough to deliver our services, because those capital programs take away those large dollars. And if you cast backward, if you look back to the table that has starting in 2015, need to remember that there was large infusions came into our budget with 2 government funded programs, of which we are still utilizing that money. And then our expenses dropped very significantly. And even though we had a 2% tax change, I think in 21, I think it was 21. So just, it is laudable to be a guardian of the public purse, but our ability to deliver the services that the community expects, and we have had our community satisfaction survey that's told us that. So I need to remind council in my role as the CAO that these levels of tax changes could and are likely to have some longer term impacts on our levels of service. So, and unless the demands for local government services decrease, and we do have some growing areas in the social service, arts and culture, some very important aspects of our community that we have plans in place for, and expectations to deliver. There will be challenges. So if we are not taxing, so remembering that the 5, 6%, 7% is required to both deliver our existing services, address service and ongoing changes, and commitments inside the community. And so I did hear from council to say, well, we want to see what the implication is of doing that. So that's good. So we haven't made that decision, but council is signaling very hard that those are tax change options that we want to see. We are, of course, take council's direction in that regard, and so we'll come back with the implications on those. Thanks.
Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks very much. I guess as I talk about smoothing, I think perhaps a point that maybe wasn't captured there is it's not necessarily just simply to reduce the bow wave in 2027. it would be to not see sort of like, typical row of numbers is 12, 13, 9, 3.5, 3. Is I don't think we need to end the last couple of years with, you have to obviously increase a fair amount to then be able to smooth out or to lower the increases to 3.3 by the end. That if we could have like, if say 7, 7, 7, 7, and 7, what would that achieve as opposed to, so I guess part of my thoughts on smoothing it is twofold. One is not to have a giant bow wave or a big spike. And the other one is not to find ourselves at a 3% tax increase at the end, because I don't think that's what any of us are trying to achieve around this table. Like I don't think we're trying to push things we have to get from the beginning of the 5-year plan, the rate to the end, the amount of money we need, and it goes up and then stabilizes. And if we could perhaps just go in more, but anyway, just the point regarding the extremely low rates in 29 and 30 in all of the models, I think that probably augurs against the smoothing out of the taxes over the course of 5 years. So would like to see the numbers over the 5 years sort of be constant if possible, or to model something that tries to achieve that. Does that make sense in terms of those sort of year 4 and 5, the very low tax rates that I don't think there's any directive around the table to try and achieve that as part of the plan. Anyway, just some context, the idea of smoothing.
And Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, the risk of dragging this out unnecessarily. I kind of, on a personal level, it's kind of like, I decided I want to invest in a bunch of assets like cars and houses. And I use my savings to pay those monthly debt fees. And then when I run out of savings, it's like I really got to go to work and make a whole lot of money. And so, we can smooth this out, but eventually you hit a wall and it's got to crank up. So I think if we want to smooth out this bow wave, we need to have a hard look at our capital plan, but look forward to seeing your numbers when you come back.
All right, we have a motion that's been moved and seconded. Councillor Morin.
Yeah, I mean, I think just on that point, I think the reality is that there are times when we will hit a wall, and it's because the province is not giving us the funds that we need to fulfill their mandate in terms of these pressures that we've had over the last few years. And that's when we will have to say to the public, we have some social issues, we have, whatever else on the list of projects that we have to do, infrastructure that needs to be done, and we're not getting a lot of help. So taxes have to go up that year. But I think what we've talked about is reasonable to at least explore the scenarios, but also knowing that there may be a year that, I mean, taxes are going to be higher because, we're not getting the resources that we need for the problems that we're trying to deal with that are actually shouldn't be on our plate. I'm just ending on a bit of a feisty note there because we're in this agonizing decision place every year. And we get some criticism, although nobody showed up for any of these budget meetings and I haven't had any emails. But we will get criticized for whatever decision we make. And I'd love it if people would just redirect that energy to writing letters to the province and the feds to help us out a bit more. Thanks.
There's 2 people watching right now. They may be staff. Or family. It could be family too, but let's assume that there are people who are very, very interested in the budget conversation. We do have a motion on the floor. We've had I just want to thank staff on the great job over the last couple of days having these conversations, but we'll take a vote on this motion. All those in favor? And motion carries. And I think Mr. Langemeyer has a comment.
So I still need to see council's direction on the endorsement of the plan as presented.
Mhm.
Because that's, I can
'Cause there was
create
a
tax
whole-
scenarios, but if I don't have a capital plan or a operating plan to create the scenarios against, it really opens the world up.
Yeah, and there was a slide that had the,
Mr. Mayor. If I may,
Yeah,
Mr. Mayor.
Mr.
So,
Garvin.
per our finance officer's comment, so the first motion was, so just to go back, that the property taxation, provide direction on property taxation change scenarios. So that's the motion that you just voted on. The next one is the committee of the whole endorse the 2026 to 30 operating plan as presented. Capital, and then I'm not sure, the committee of the whole endorse the 26-30 financial plan, because that, I think, is subject to the first one. Yeah, I think the last, my apologies, I think the last two resolutions from the staff report aren't appropriate at this time.
and this is probably fine the way it is right now, because I know it's giving you some grief. So we'll just leave, I think we can all read it. So sorry, and I'll pass it over to Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, well, would it be fair to say that we endorse the plans as presented with the changes, like we discussed making some changes in yesterday's meeting, for instance, so those would have to be reflected, right? So I don't wanna. But do we need to say that, or you'll just capture that?
Mr. Langenmeyer.
The two changes I have is the change to the consolidated municipal building and the identification of council's direction on McPhee Meadows from the November 19th.
Right. I'm happy to move, so.
Well,
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, we'll let Councillor Morton chat and then.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, there were also the two items that Ms. O'Connell was going to go back to her staff about, which was the urban forest strategy and the air park
Yeah.
plan. So, I mean, and there may be other things that I'm missing, but that was my comment earlier. How do we endorse the existing plan when there are some adjustments that are going to be made? And so that plan will be different. Because we can't endure.
Mhm.
I mean, if we're asking for those revisions, then we can't endorse this existing plan.
Can we endorse it in principle? Like what would make it workable for staff?
And so those items that may move, when I bring back information, I'll have a list of, this is what was presented. Here are the items that have changed that didn't get direct council.
That'll
direction.
get updated.
Yeah, and those are the ones that you will see, like Kate's returning with information on those. It may move, it may not. When we're actually coming to the creation of the financial plan, those pieces will be clearly identified and adjusted.
And this is for our consideration in 2026. So just getting back to that timeline, it'll come back to us. There'll be contemplation. We'll have a meeting or 2, 3 to kind of, or some time. Is that the idea? With that newish information?
That is right. And so what this really gives me is I have a financial plan bylaw I can start creating for council's consideration, would identify the changes. At that time, council can make further clarifications if they like. We may get,
Okay.
the information back on the different scenarios. And council may say, hey, this is still not what I want to do. There's a capital project I want to add or subtract to get to the change you want.
Okay. And not to hold you to it, but when would we kind of think we might get something like that back to council? Oh.
Through the mayor,
Yeah.
it's our intention, we had got direction from council to have a financial plan come. This is the earliest time it's been. We've had some really good engagement. Council has actually posed some important questions and actually asked us, and I'm summarizing, really to ask us to take a very clear 5-year financial plan, manage our surplus, and we do. So I think there's been some really, really important discussion here. And so we need to come back as early as we can reasonably do to make sure we have, council's been very clear on those two items. And so sufficient time to do that. I would like to honor council's previous direction to have our well, and actually desire from our staff to have adopted financial plan because we can get on with the work. If we have to hire staff or engage consultants and do the work in our community, this is the last year of this term. And we also were very clear in our strategic plan update on what we want to get accomplished. So the save for coming back with the money in case any of that's affected with our actual deliverables in that year. I want to come back as quick as possibly can in the new year. And so for a specific date, I can't tell you that this time, but we do know that council has given direction to have this prepared and we need to get moving on all of our important work. So.
Okay, well, I'm happy to make this motion that we endorse the operating plan, capital plan, financial plan, and direct staff to prepare the financial plan bylaw.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further conversations, questions, or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? And motion carries. No in camera. It's only 7.